And we are live. The Terminator Thoughts Film. Now, this video contains spoilers. It's a long video, but there are time codes for the different sections in the description box. I've done other videos on the subject, and the links will be in the description box. And since I've made other videos, I'm going to try not to restate here what I said there. And I got this on sale, so anything negative I say in this is not out of bitterness. And I intend to do new videos on the entire film franchise, all the movies and the TV show, both seasons of the TV show, before Terminator 6 comes out. And Wikipedia currently says that that will be the end of October or the start of November. So I've plotted it out. It's not going to be every week, but I should be able to get there before. Yeah. Now, my own film critic rating for this, yeah, ultimately it's a 9 out of 10, but my personal rating is definitely a 10 out of 10. And we jump vigorously into the first section. Notes taken while watching. The movie does an amazing job of immediately setting up the stakes. Los Angeles 2029 is lost. The machines, particularly the tank tread one, makes us feel so small and powerless. It's a war we can't win. The text assures us that the final battle is fought tonight, so we spend the entire movie desperately hoping that the movie will end with humanity in triumph. Over the course of the film, we are told that ultimately humanity does win, but we're also told that that's, only because of John Connor. So if the movie ended with Sarah, dying, we would. I mean, I've seen movies that try to sell you on this, when this person or group dies, basically, all hope is lost. Where it just doesn't completely, it's not, just making sure my cell phone is set to silent, and it is, you don't completely buy it, and that's a problem if the movie is about that. And yeah, this is a case where it genuinely is. And I know some people are going to say, well, going in that they're going to win. In 1984, considering how dark it is entirely possible that it could have ended in tragedy. There are movies that, end in tragedy from that period, especially ones that are this dark. Speaking of dark, let me just fix the lighting set. There we go. That might have sounded slightly more dramatic than, I'm not entirely sure how much noise will be picked up by the microphone, but all I did was drop, what's it called, the plug itself from the switch, and it's fine. Dropped it on the floor. Did not throw it on the ground. Now, we go directly from a big, powerful machine in the future, 45 years from the movie, to a big, powerful machine in 1984. Throughout there are these really good parallels drawn, machines in the present. I'm going to go with present, since when the movie was made, it was the present. In the present and in the future, and sort of the way people live. You see people, you don't see a lot of it, but you do see a few people who live, I guess it's only really the homeless guy, but anyway, there is the one guy living in squalor in the present day, and you do see, certainly when they, let's see, I forget what it's called, but when they leave the car on the road, or they get it off the road, and then they hide under this like archway thing, and you know, she has a dream based on what he tells her, and we see the flashback thing. You know, certainly that's a very, you know, they are, their temporary living condition there is very similar to what the permanent living condition for the people of the future is, you know. So it is this thing of some directors are too, you know, too worried that, you know, no, you can only have like, this section has, you know, let's say lighthearted music and a lot of color, and this other section has only darkness and more somber music and such. And sometimes that works, but you do, for a movie like this, it's important that it does feel, because ultimately this is not a movie where you spend very much of it seeing like actual futuristic robots. You know, for most of the movie we're seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then there's some makeup effects and some physical effects. I'm not putting those down, but I'm saying they're, considering the you know, if you actually like sit down and log the time, there's not that much screen time devoted to them. Most of the movie, it's Schwarzenegger, you know, he fixes the eye and then he puts sunglasses on, and then for a while we don't see the messed up eye again. So it's important to draw these parallels and to convey that this is a, yeah, you know, in the future the machines will take over, but they do already have some power. You know, the movie ends in this, you know, what's it called? Like, yeah, you know, you've got the robot arms, you've got the press thing, you know. Yeah, it ends with a machine defeating a machine, you know. I suppose you could say a human defeating a machine using a machine. Arnold arrives and rises, and the audience feels like this is someone who could pick you up, turn you inside out without breaking a sweat. I love the Terminator dealing with the three gang members. I don't have much to say about that scene. I'd just be describing the entire scene and quoting the lines. It's just, I love it. I think it's the editing, the build-up, the tension. Like, there is this, like, when the three switchblades come out, you do actually kind of want, because at this point you don't know that that's a robot, you know. It just looks like a really big, strong guy. So it is like, oh wow, how is he going to contend with that? And just, yeah. Now, and I'm afraid I don't know the third guy, which I do feel a little bad about, but I really love, like, it's Bill Paxton and then Brian, I'm blanking on his last name. Maybe I should have written it down. I wasn't planning. Like I said, I wasn't really planning on talking about the scene, but I just love that, you know, Brian, you know, he was bad in the second Mortal Kombat movie, but who isn't? And yeah, I quite liked a number of his roles. You know, big, strong, intense guy, you know. And you've got Bill Paxton, who apparently he was basically like, it's been a while since I heard, but I think it was on the Aliens commentary track where apparently, like, Bill Paxton, he was a carpenter or something. He was like painting, you know, they were making sets and he was like painting wood. And like, I forget the details, but, you know, somehow he and James Cameron like got talking, or maybe it was that James Cameron he looked at him and he thought, I can make this guy look like a punk or something, and just like, you know, hey, do you want to be one of the first human faces that anybody sees in this movie? You know, he said, oh, yeah, sure. And is he in every single? I don't think he was in Avatar, but is that the only one? Is he in The Abyss? I think other than that, wait, I don't think he's in Terminator 2, which makes sense because his character would have to be a twin of the a twin, since time had passed between the two movies. But other than that, he's basically in every single James Cameron movie. So it's like, I mean, he didn't have to put him in more than one movie. You know, he didn't even have to put him in the one movie. But he liked it, and James Cameron uses him really well. You know, I guess I shouldn't give away an asteroid. He's all pathetic and sleazy in True Lies. In Titanic, he's kind of an ass, and you know the cynicism of him really works well. And let's see. I mean, yeah, you know, this role isn't especially playing to his strengths, but I think he's fine as he's convincing enough. It's really only when you watch this movie and you know the way he plays other characters that he's, you know. And then you've got Aliens, where, you know, some of the time he's all bravado, and then, like, once things start going wrong, he's so defeatist, and, like, I love the again, I'm not gonna just sit here and quote the movie. You know, hopefully you've watched it, and, you know, if you haven't watched it recently, go do so. You know, IMDb has the quotes. These videos get long enough as it is, just without, you know, yeah, without me just restating. Was that all of them? And he was a lot of fun in Edge of Tomorrow, and, you know, rest in peace, Bill Paxton. You were incredibly fun in, you know, maybe not in many movies, but, you know, some of the most influential movies. And he's also, I mean, and I think it was because, like, he also became friends with Schwarzenegger. You know, they filmed that scene, and so they got talking. So he's in this role. I completely forgot he was in it. But last time I watched Commando, there he is, Bill Paxton, for, like, I don't know, 20 seconds maybe of screen time. But that's him. You see his face, you hear his voice. That's, you know, and it is this thing of, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's just, I'm not going to say he's perfect, and he apparently, like, had some issues with, you know, not respecting women's boundaries for sexuality and such, but, I mean, in a lot of ways, he seems like just a nice guy. You know, he helps out his friends, he gets his friends work, and he's like, you know, I like working with this guy. He should work with me on this other movie that just, yeah, that's great. Now, let's see. Very intense when Reese arrives, avoids cops, gets his hands on clothes and a shotgun. And I like the cut with, like, you know, he's just arrived, and the homeless guy, he's been rambling, you know, I mean, every so often, you know, you might find yourself thinking to yourself, maybe you're even thinking out loud, and you're like, I can't believe that, you know, that person really screwed me. But this guy is, again, no offense to people who have actual mental illness, but, yeah, I mean, this guy, It seems as though he has mental problems. You know, he's talking as if he thinks that other people can hear him. Like the way he's talking, it's like he's in a bar or something, and he's complaining about, like, his wife or something. And, you know, yeah, maybe it was like he used to be married, and then he lost his job, and she kicked him out, and now he's homeless, and he's still stuck in that, you know, mentally. But you have that, you know, and then, like, Reese runs up, and he's just seen the time travel. So he's like, okay, please tell me I'm not crazy. Did you just see a real bright light, you know? And immediately it cuts to the light from the police car. Yeah. And the Terminator easily breaks the latch lock, I think that's what it's called, shoots the wrong Sarah Connor to death with no trouble in suburbia, where people feel safe, especially from that sort of thing, you know, far away from gangs and such. And I have to say, I really like the deleted scene where, like, basically you have I mean, it's essentially an extended scene where just after that, the Terminator turns around, walks back out. You know, you've just seen him go across the lawn. You see him walk back out across the lawn, and there's, like, I think children crying because they're scared, you know, the noise. And, like, the you know, that little dog, it's like going crazy now. It was kind of, you know, it was barking before, but now it's just, and he just walks right out, gets in the car, and drives away as if nothing. Like, you know, if it was a human being, it would really be like, you know, he'd be like, okay, I hope nobody sees my face, and, you know, hurrying out to the car. But to him, it's just like, you know, he's walking as casually as if he, like, delivered milk, and now he's going out to deliver some more or something. Just completely casual. You know, I think that one is really great, but, you know, James Cameron cut it. And I think, in general, the deleted scenes, I get, with some of them, I certainly get why he cut them. He does a good job of explaining it in the commentary for the deleted scenes, but I don't know. I mean, I guess it's, yeah, they don't do that sort of thing if the director doesn't want to do it, and if no producer wants to do it, they don't make a cut where they just put the deleted scenes back into the movie. I do feel like that. I know that wouldn't be the cut. Yeah, I mean, that's essentially it. James Cameron is protective about these sorts of things. He doesn't want people to see a bad cut. You know, he got a director's cut on Terminator 2 and Aliens, and it's, you know, this is stuff he didn't want to cut. So it's like, but I do think it would be an interesting, maybe like a fan edit or something, you know, because they're not bad, and I mean, I think, was it Cracked maybe who said that, you know, it was some kind of thing of like, you know, when you watch Aliens, the director's cut, which I think he puts it, it's a worse movie than the regular cut, but there's more of the movie, so that's what we watch. And I don't know, I mean, maybe. I don't necessarily think that it's been a long time since I watched the theatrical cut of Aliens or Terminator 2, but I think there are arguments to be made that there are aspects of the movie that are better in the theatrical cut than in the director's cut. And yeah, but ultimately, you know, the theatrical cut, that's what he could get away with back then, and then the director's cut is what he would want. He's not going to put out a movie that just has a version that's not really what he wanted. You know, you have that for, like, you know, you can, if you buy the X-Men 1.5 DVD, you can watch it and they'll, like, awkwardly stick back in scenes that, you know, some stuff that just doesn't work in the, you know, I don't know exactly whose idea that was, but I can imagine, you know, Bryan Singer. I don't know if he had the influence back then to have done anything, and it's possible that he doesn't care that much if, you know, if those scenes are just stuck back in there. It does make for a slightly awkward viewing experience, which is too bad, because some of the deleted scenes are good scenes. But, you know, one of the things is that some of the footage in the deleted scenes was actually used, like that part where, like, you see Rogue and some of the other students in class. You know, there's voiceover of it in the finished film, but that was originally a scene, you know, and in the deleted scenes, when you just watch the version with all those plugged back in, it shows you that, and it shows you the way it's edited in the final film, so it's slightly awkward, but yeah. I've said it before, but I really love Vukovich and Traxler, the two cops, Hardin and Gruff, and this dry sense of humor. And Sarah's mother left a message on their machine setting up that she's a factor in the movie. I do excuse me, that is something I really, really, I mean, that's like, I'm trying to figure out if the word is respect or love. I love and or respect that she's mentioned several times, and clearly she's worried about Sarah. And there's this sense that maybe, maybe one of them, maybe both of them would feel safer if they were together. She's that kind of mother. Yeah, Sarah is, she's a grown woman, but her mother still worries about her. And, to be fair, a lot of the concern that she expresses is after to her and to Sarah at the time, it seems like a maniac is chasing her. So that it makes sense that there's concern there. But just the fact that, yeah, she's mentioned several times, and there's this sense of safety, and then you don't actually see her. And the one time that it seems like you might get to see her, the Terminator, he like blew up the door, shot through something like that. It looks kind of like an explosion happened there, and like there's stuff been messed up, and then you see that he's sitting there. He went to the cabin, which he got the address because he stole her address book before leaving for the club, and he figured, well, maybe she will, maybe she'll contact her mother. That seems like a probable, so he went to the mother's, the cabin, and which, they thought she'd be safe there. And the Terminator blew open the door, goes in, kills her, and then he sits down and just waits. He didn't even like close the door after him or something. Again, which, like burglars might close the door behind them, hoping that no one will notice that they're there until they're done, But he just sits down and waits for her to call. And most of the lines are, you don't see the Terminator, and certainly don't see the mother. You see Sarah as these lines are spoken, but the Terminator really picked the exact, this sounds like what, Sarah's mother would be saying. She, at first Sarah's just like, I'm sorry, I've been told not to tell you where I am. And the Terminator doesn't just go like, you have to, just tell me now or something. When he deals with the gang members at the start, he just goes up, your clothes, give them to me now. And, he kills two of them, or he kills at least one of them. The other one might just be knocked out, and the third one gives him his clothes. And so there, he doesn't put on some major act. But here, he knows he has to, sometimes I'm going to refer to him as he, sometimes as it. Yeah. The Terminator realizes that the only way to get the information that it needs from Sarah is to, really lay it on kind of thick, just really, you told me to go here to the cabin, I'm worried sick, I don't know what's going on, and you can't tell me anything. I'm just really, she sounds like a very concerned mother. And Sarah's, she's only human. What can she, of course she's gonna try to reassure her mother, and yeah, that, the Terminator, it calculated that it needed to go that far, that it needed to keep going into all these things instead of just asking or something. But and I think it's perfect that we don't see the Terminator's face until the very end, and before that you see the destruction he's wrought. So it's one of these, you know, the camera pans and we gradually realize what's happened and just how bad. Yeah. Now, let's see. And I forget. I always mix up the name. Is it Traxler? It's the African American cop. He actually forgot he already had a lit cigarette. The voice typing came out as a little secret, which I guess is a decent guess. You know, he actually forgot he had, like, you know, I think he's got the cigarette here, and he's like, give me a cigarette, and he gets the pack, and he moves it over, and, you know, he's about to get out a cigarette with the other hand, but then he realizes, oh, I already have a lit one, and then puts the, you know, if he could, like, you know, if he could pick it up and, like, light it with one hand, he would have lit a second cigarette. You really do understand why Sarah is scared that Reese is following her. And the first time you watch the movie, you don't know before he starts shooting the Terminator that he's a good guy. You've seen a flashback that indicates that he fights the robots. But you don't know if he's there to protect her or if he's there to kill her, like with Dyson in the second one. You know, at that point, you have no idea about the whole thing with, you know, what the exact purpose, you know, her unborn son, that's what it's about. And the song Ginger listens to after sex, you know, some of the lyrics, I mean, I'm guessing this is I've only heard of it, what they play in the movie. I'm guessing this is like the chorus or something, but it goes, intimacy, intimacy, ya, 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 ya. That is ridiculous and very 80s, and yeah. I mean, that is certainly something. I think I might have said that in the other vlog I did on this movie, but yeah, the movie is very 80s, and they didn't know in the 80s that this stuff was going to look ridiculous once it was no longer in fashion, you know. It really is creepy seeing how dispassionate the Terminator is while gunning people down. And great ironic use of music, the chorus of "You've Got Me Burning," you know, that line repeats 4 times as, you know, the Terminator is like looking for Sarah and approaching Sarah, and Sarah looks around and sees her stalker. And, you know, again, I mean, to the audience, he's maybe not as scary because, I mean, he had a chance to kill a cop and he didn't. You know, he doesn't seem like he's necessarily, you know, we don't necessarily think he's a bad guy, but to her, that's the stalker. And it genuinely is horrifying, the idea that being in a public place, being surrounded by people, someone could still walk right up and gun you down like that. That is, I mean, the movie really does go into some major fears of the, you know, just American society in the 1980s. You know, he talks about in one of the DVD extras something about like gun culture was reaching a really high level, so that's something he used in the movie. And just, you know, yeah, these various situations where just, yeah, if there was someone who would just walk right up, and, you know, thankfully today some places have more security, although that's of course also something that constantly reminds us the world we live in. But, and that is something that, you know, there's this very brief part in when the police are being gunned down in the police station. Some police run from one room to another, and, like, you know, I think they're maybe getting guns or getting into a good position to shoot from or something. And there's this, it's not like you can't make out every single word spoken. It's just this casual. But one of them seems to suggest that maybe it's a terrorist or something. And yeah, even in 1984, the idea of, like, yeah, you know, that they don't, you know, They could also have said something like mass shooter or something. Was that a term that was really in use back then? I'm not sure, but yeah, terrorist. They figure, and that is, I mean, if you watch the movie and you don't know anything about the time travel stuff and future stuff and such, which the audience knows from right away, we know that, yeah, it's pretty obvious that it's time travel. We know that there's something in the future that will have to be dealt with in the present, and then we see these people arrive with bright light. Yeah, it's time travel, so obviously something else. And by then, the audience has accepted, okay, this is a robot, but yeah, if you don't know that, it really must look like that. That is, to everyone who doesn't come into direct contact with a Terminator, it really must just look like, a terrorist or something. And Sarah is pinned down by someone the Terminator shot in order to get to her. It doesn't mind shooting others. It's this kind of, it is whatever. It's not gonna wait until that other woman has moved clear of Sarah. It just happens to run out of bullets and then have to reload right after shooting that woman. Which is, I didn't end up doing a count of it, but there are several times in the movie where it really seems like, yeah, the Terminator could easily have killed Sarah, and sometimes it's luck, sometimes it's Kyle moving. Yeah, I mean, the Terminator would have killed her if, Kyle hadn't started shooting the Terminator is pointing the gun at her, and the laser sight is, but here and that is like, obviously part of why he hides his gun is that he realizes if he goes into the club and he's just got a gun out, they're gonna, they're gonna realize they're not gonna let him in. But in part it's also that he manages to make such a seemingly, the Terminator doesn't think that he's a threat, because if it did, it would obviously try to shoot him before her. There's no, it's, alright, well, it seemed as though it was surprised, as much as a computer can be surprised by the him suddenly shooting at it. So yeah, I would say that, yeah. So let's see. Yeah, there's that. There's when it punches through the windshield and is, yeah, as I talk about in my old vlog. And let's see, there's the very end, right before she manages to crush it. And yeah, I'd say various times when they're driving and shooting at each other, which is also something I read the reviews on Metacritic, and I read the critics' reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. I didn't read the user reviews, I don't think. I think it was a user review on Metacritic where someone said the action got tedious. And I mean, I guess if you're just, I guess I can kind of understand. I don't agree. I think ultimately just ultimately it wasn't really a movie for that person. It's, I mean, there's yeah, that's where I land on it. It's an amazing movie, and it just wasn't that person's. I don't blame people who find the movie too intense, or people who have a hard time going back to it after watching Terminator 2. I'm basically the opposite. I have a hard time with any sequel. I guess I appreciate that the game that you get to, do some of the future war stuff. I'm not going to claim, sorry, War of the Machines. I think Terminator War of the Machines is what the game is called. That is something that I sometimes forget to say, because I do realize it is not the only Terminator-based game. There are a lot of them. It's just that I've only played that one and then the old Terminator 2 one. So to me, those are the Terminator games. And if I want to talk about the Terminator 2 one, I'm going to call it the Terminator 2 game. So anyway, I'm not going to claim that it's, it definitely has weaknesses as a game, as almost all licensed games do. As all licensed games that aren't the original Aladdin direct tie-in game to the original movie, and the TMNT tie-in game, although that one, it maybe has some issues, but I'm going to do a video on that eventually. The thing, let me think. Right. Personally, I don't think, I've always had a hard time with the sequels of this. This is a movie you really don't need to add anything to. I'm not saying that there aren't other interesting stories to tell. I can imagine, are there novels or like short stories based on, I can imagine that there are compelling stories set within the universe. I just don't think we're ever going to get them as a major mainstream Hollywood blockbuster. At most it would have to be called something else and pretend to belong to a different franchise, because just people didn't want a movie that was set completely in the future, which is part of why, I don't know, but by the time of Salvation, maybe people really badly want, because with Terminator 3, it was really getting to be ridiculous with how literally nothing happens, nothing changes in these movies. It's just, if you're going to have a continuity, it really should change things. Just in general, there should be, a story should have some kind of, it should accomplish something, which really the third movie really, really doesn't. And what it tries, I'm going to get to it eventually. Anyway, and I should say, I'm going off what I remember of it. It has been, have I watched it since 2003? I guess I'm not sure I have. So there you go, 16 years. Well, not 16 full years, but over 15. Anyway, right. To me, you shouldn't have sequels to this. But anyway, if you watch the second one and you love it, even if you watch the first one, I understand it can be difficult to go back and watch the first one because it's such a different movie. And just, yeah. But I understand why he called it tedious, but I would specifically say that it's not, which is incredible when you consider, at the end of the day, if you talk about it completely dispassionately, this is a movie in which, let's just go with people, because he looks like a person for almost the entire movie. People shoot at each other. They shoot at each other in a club. Then they drive for a while shooting at each other. Then he shoots a bunch of other people and almost catches up to them. Then he catches up to them and they drive and shoot at each other some more. If James Cameron wasn't so unbelievably talented, perhaps especially back then, I do still think that there's a lot there's a lot of great in Avatar, but I understand people. There are definitely issues with it. I just don't think that there are very many issues that come from a waning of talent. He didn't really want to tell a story that had never been told before, I don't think. There's no way in the world that James Cameron is completely unaware of the existence of Pocahontas and, like, The Last of the sorry, Dances with Wolves. Sorry. Yeah, I apologize. That was, anyway. That's simply, there's no way that he doesn't know about them, that he didn't know about them when he started making Avatar. But he did, when he made it, he didn't need for his movie to be completely, I mean, isn't that the thing when he made Titanic as well, that there have been other romance stories set on the Titanic before his movie, and just, anyway, if not for James Cameron's talent, this movie, the action would be tedious. It really is. And that's, one of the things where, like, that's the really interesting thing in Terminator Genesis, when suddenly they come prepared. Terminator travels back in time, but they knew that was going to happen. So, yeah. Now, let me think. Yeah, I had a point, but I forgot it, I think. Let's see. Yeah, it's nothing in my notes. Must have been something I came to off. Right. Yeah, right. I think something I want to say, the amount of action, it is a movie that never lets go from the very start to the very finish, and that's not for everyone, and you're entitled to your opinion. I do think that, I just feel like with that kind of thing, you should maybe say, this movie wasn't for me, but I can appreciate, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to give a negative review of a musical and say there was too much singing. It's just, this movie wasn't for you. Musicals tend to not be for me. There are a couple of exceptions. Yeah, I'm gonna throw you a bone. If you're sitting there and you're like, I'm gonna watch this guy if he doesn't like musicals. I love the original theatrical, the I think 1963, not the stage musical, but the original movie musical, which technically I'm not sure it's a musical, but it's a movie about a musical. The Producers, or Springtime for Hitler, as it's, depending on what country you saw it in. I really appreciate it. It's too bad he didn't get to call it Springtime for Hitler in America, but in other countries that's what it's called. So that's good. And I'm really glad that he didn't say, no, I'm not going to make the movie if I don't get to call. He was, okay, fine, I'm going to call it The Producers, because that movie really is amazing. I'm really glad that he wasn't too stubborn to get it made. He did insist, people tried to talk him into, how about Springtime for Mussolini? I mean, Hitler, that's... And I get it. I totally get the criticisms of it. But I do think that, I would just be restating what Lindsay Ellis did a fantastic job of explaining in her video on the movie. What was that video essay called? Was it just called the Producers and Satire in Film, or something like that? A second. Okay, that was more than 1 second. I apologize. I'll apologize again. Sorry. Sometimes when you've spent so many years not realizing how problematic a character is, you sometimes forget briefly that. I'm sorry. Let's see. It bears repeating. It really is very smart to have all the exposition delivered while they're hiding and during chases and such. There is a lot to establish that can only be that can only be done by that can only be established by Reese telling other characters, mainly Sarah. So the choice to have it during tense scenes so it doesn't feel tedious is very smart, because if you just, like, let's say you never watched this movie. Let's say you just read the script and you don't, like, get really into the let's say that someone edited together just only only all the exposition and such, and just, I don't know, I guess maybe they reenacted it, but in scenes that are not tense. You know, there are a lot of movies that have exposition where it's delivered where it isn't tense, and it doesn't have to be tense in every movie. But here, it's just, there's, I mean, at the end of the day, it's one of those things where, you know, it's critical show, don't tell, and James Cameron was not going to be able to do that for this movie. He did not have the pull in Hollywood to convince people. You know, I mean, by the second one, he did, you know, he got a huge budget and they could show more of the, you know, the stuff that he envisioned in the Terminator world. But yeah, in this you have a ton of stuff that just, I mean, excuse me, theoretically, I guess you could show Reese working, you know, what was it? Working in a disposal unit loading bodies, something like that. I might be swapping around some of the words there, but, you know, I guess you could show Reese growing up as, you know, after, what was it he said? He grew up after the war, hiding, so, you know, you could show these things, but that wouldn't work for this movie. It wouldn't, not even remotely. It would really slow things down if you had that. You know, again, you have two flashbacks. You see the future world 3 times. At the very start, where you see very, very little, and then you get the text introduction. You see just enough that you accept, okay, what I'm seeing is this future war. And then you have the 2 flashbacks. And yeah, that's all you actually see, and all 3 times the future seems like a really horrifying place to exist, you know, and yeah. And 45 minutes in, with a few minutes under an hour left of the movie, Sarah is told that it's her son that turns it all around, that's why she's so important. And moments before Sarah hits the brakes and the Terminator crashes into the wall, clearly Kyle hits something in the Terminator's head that is significant, and we see not long after that it's I'm going to try not to go on a rant here, but I really don't understand people who don't get that. Just watch the movie. Actually sit down and watch the movie. It's not even subtext. Like, I mean, you know how it's filmed when, like, filmed and edited when, okay, that clearly that character was just hit, you know. In most of the movies, there are a lot of movies that don't actually show, like, a squib going off, you know, and certainly that wouldn't work here, because part of the point is that later, you know, it's like, okay, the Terminator is gone, and then, you know, you see it walking into the you know, goes in through the window in the apartment, and then it, like, pulls on that thing so the light comes on, and then we see its messed up eye. That's the reveal. We're not supposed to know exactly what happened, and when you see that reveal, you know, that's supposed to be like, oh, I guess that's what happened, you know, but there are people who are like, oh, why doesn't he just, yeah. I have decided some time ago that I am not going to devote these videos to apologism. Life is too short. If you're going to pretend you don't get it, then I'm not going to try to convince you. You're not worth trying to convince. And I also wanted to briefly say, you know, when Reese explains the whole thing with, you know, they destroyed the time machine. Nobody goes home, nobody else goes through, it's just him and me. You know, if they didn't destroy the time machine immediately after he travels through, it's possible that they would be killed by robots and more Terminators sent through afterwards. And, you know, I think, yeah, he specifically said, listen, you got to keep track of it, because several of the movies retcon some of this stuff, but as far, yeah, in this one, according to this one, if you don't go by any of the sequels, they arrive and they see, you know, the Terminator had already gone through. You know, there's some kind, maybe there's like a display, or, well, I guess not, since they're all robots and they wouldn't need to read. You know, yeah, maybe it's maybe like the machine gets really hot when it's active, and they arrive and it's like glowing red, and they're like, okay, so it was just used, and the only thing that makes any sense is that it sent a Terminator through, because only, you know, nothing dead will go through. Okay, gotcha. We're going to use it to travel to, and then, you know, then we're going to destroy it, because, you know, maybe it only just had time to send a single Terminator through, but if they didn't destroy it, even just a few more minutes might mean that the robots kill them and more Terminators are sent through. Right, there we go. Horrifying reality and the bunker. Yeah, I already talked about that in the old vlog. I just want to briefly mention it here. I like the designs of the future weapons. They feel futuristic, but not like, you know, silly, not like 60s, you know, I'm sorry, but a lot of 60s sci-fi guns and machines and uniforms and such look silly by today's standards, you know, and, you know, ray guns, as Dr. Silverman, you know, it's again one of those things where if you didn't have Silverman say that, you know, it's the, James Cameron is acknowledging that the idea of a war in the future, we've seen some silly versions of that, you know, so it's important to acknowledge that there is such a thing in, you know, when people watched this in 1994 and they thought about future science fiction war, you know, some of the things that would be called to, you know, that they would recall in their memory are like, that's kind of silly though, isn't it? And so immediately after he says ray guns, we have Reese delivering these very intense, you know, explain, no ray gun, you know, he doesn't say that, but it's the movie saying that's not the kind of, you know, no, this is a more serious and kind of gritty version of that. I appreciate that the sex scene is filmed as something intimate rather than sexy. I really love the fake out where we don't realize they already left the motel room before the Terminator fires on the bed. You know, for a lot of it, when there's an action scene and Reese and or Sarah is involved, they're the ones we're seeing. You know, we don't spend we do also sometimes see Terminator for, you know, some time without seeing a character that we know, but usually when you know, we would expect, you know, that we see them hear the dog bark, you know, the you know, like she pretends to throw the bag of, you know, the explosives, she pretends to throw that at him, but she's like, you know, she does the think fast thing. And then he smiles, and that's the one time he smiles the entire movie, and almost immediately, he shouldn't have smiled. See, if he hadn't smiled, that dog wouldn't have started barking, the Terminator would have been further away. No, obviously, the moment they hear that, we just see them react like, oh, a dog's barking. And what happens, we don't see it, but what happens is they get out of there, I don't know, maybe through a window or something, I'm not sure how many doors, I think that's maybe something Simpsons race, but it's like, it's Kyle, though. He would have made sure that there's an escape route, obviously. just because we don't see it. It's not like they were in a room with for sure only one door and everything else is concrete. No, just so yeah. They run around and they get to where he was just before, but we don't see that. We see the Terminator closing in on the motel room we know they're in. So when we see him shoot, we're not 100% sure that they left the bedroom. So yeah. And I'm sure this is not the first movie to have that kind of fake out, and yeah, I'm not going to claim that that's something the movie made up. I cannot say enough good things about the repeated image of the Terminator getting back up after he's been through something that no human being would get back up after. When he's shot in the club, when Sarah knocks his bike over, and he he doesn't just fall off the bike and then lay there. No, he goes off the bike and then he goes, like he's like a skateboard or something. He just over, but without wheels, which is what makes it, and it makes sense because he was driving at a very high speed, and yeah, so he's, being completely, yeah, and then after the truck blows up, and even after the torso is blown up, the first time you watch the movie, each of these, it keeps going, it keeps one-upping itself, it keeps going to a new extreme of something where, yeah, he's not getting up after that, at first when you don't realize that it's not a human being, it looks like a human being, technically. I forget if it was like Goof or where exactly, but it was pointed out, technically it's not a cyborg, because cyborg means that it can't, it has like human organs or something. A cyborg would die if the living tissue parts all died. And as you see at the end of this movie, once all that goes away, it is a metal skeleton that looks a lot like a human skeleton, but it is pure metal and it's still moving, so it's technically not a cyborg. But anyway, before you know he's a robot, you're like, oh, he's not getting up after that. Once you know he's a robot, you're like, please don't get up after that. And yeah, when he does, after the truck blows up and after the torso is blown up, it genuinely feels like the movie is essentially, if at that point the movie had if something really it's at both of those times you have accepted, no, the movie's over now, they won, the thing is dead, it's not going to get back up, but then it does, and it's and the brilliant thing is, it doesn't actually contradict anything else in the movie. I hate when movies do that, when it's like, bet you didn't see this coming. Of course I didn't, because you specifically earlier outlined that couldn't happen. But here, they never said that the thing can't go on moving if it doesn't have any flesh left on the skeleton. That the thing wouldn't possibly be able to get up. We don't actually see the legs after, do we? We see some of the, even if we do, anyway, what we for sure know is the upper torso was blown off the rest of the body. This is something where it genuinely, the explosive was so close to its chest, and we expect, we think of, whatever heart it had must have died, from that explosion. So it is that you genuinely think that this is it. It can't get back up because that explosion must have done it. That it can't possibly get back up after that, but it does. And just the and yeah, I forget if, yeah, I think I noted later, but there's like one of the documentaries, apparently, like someone at like the studio or something, they said they told James Cameron the movie has to end with the explosion, and James Cameron was like, yeah, I didn't mention this before, but yeah, it's fine for me to swear on this since it's reasonable to expect me to swear in a video that's talking about a movie that has some swearing. I'm not going to swear as much in this video as I did in the vlog. I forget if I ever explained that on camera, but basically I was like, people are going to rip into me because I'm going to say the first one's better than the second one, and, you know, yeah, screw them. I'm, you know, so, yeah. But I do think, you know, it's kind of funny to just sit and watch and just count how many times I dropped the F-bomb. But yeah, I was basically, you know, yeah. Anyway, James Cameron basically said, "Fuck you, the movie isn't over," and that's exactly right. And this movie would be, it would lose a lot for me if not for the fact that it gets up there at the end, because that is exactly, literally, the reason that the Terminator eventually stops trying to kill Sarah Connor is literally that it has been crushed. It is like a pile of, it can't possibly run after that. You know, it's been crushed. There's nothing. You know, you see the eye and the red kind of fade out, and that's it. It's gone. Okay, it's dead. The computer inside is dead, and it's not getting back up again. And that's exactly right. It's not good enough just to like blow this thing up. It's not good enough. I mean, it gets blown up more than once. The truck blows up around it, which it's set on fire. All the flesh burns off it, and then the skeleton is also blown up after that, and it's still moving. That's the Terminator. That's the perfect. And that's the thing I really don't think the other movies. By and large, I don't feel that the other Terminators are as impossible to defeat as the original Terminator. It's just, yeah. Anyway, the explosion of the truck is such catharsis. We genuinely feel like he can't possibly get up from that. When he walks out on fire, there's such a relief when he slumps over. But immediately, the moment we see him on fire, we're like, he's moving slower. He's not. And then he slumps over and we're like, yes, I knew it. They got him. And just, yeah, and it really is horrifying seeing the flesh burn off the metal skeleton. That really is. And it's you know, if the movie showed it in much more detail than it does, it would probably have ended up with an NC-17, because at the end of the day, that does look like human flesh. You know, it's when you just look at it, it looks exactly like human flesh. You know, but today you can get away with it as long as it's revealed that that was just a robot. But you know, certainly Alita has some incredibly, yeah, graphic stuff, and yet it's PG-13. Anyway, when Sarah and Kyle, Sarah like basically collapses after, once it blows up, she's like, okay, now I don't have to keep running, and like he's in the what's it called, garbage thing, when it blows up, and he gets out, and they can't see each other right away. And he's still wounded, so he slowly makes his way over there. And they catch back up. The theme starts to play softly. It seems like they've won. This is the end of the movie, right? That's the cue. And then the skeleton gets back up, and it's just, it's I mean, and that is the thing. That is, at the end of the day, basically the rest of the movie exists so that Cameron could show us the image he had in this fever dream, nightmare, kind of where he imagined this metal skeleton rising up from fire. The entire movie is built around that, and in some ways building to that, and also building to the crushing of it. But I'm really, really glad that it wasn't like that there wasn't one of those situations where the studio basically locks the director out of the editing room and says, because he makes it work. It is something that could easily, and that's, I could imagine that some audiences who didn't like it genuinely did feel that's one step too far. You can't blow up the bad guy and then have this horrifying creature rise up after. If you're gonna do something like that, you have to have it early in the movie. You can't have that at the tail end of the climax, because our brain has just accepted that the movie is over. We can relax. It's okay. But no, there it is, and that's what works so well, and that's the thing that, there are directors who would try to make it something that would happen much earlier in the film, and then there'd be like other stuff. I mean, I've seen horror movies where something incredibly horrifying happens very early on, and then nothing quite like it ever happens again, and you kind of feel like they thought that was a cool way to open the movie. They thought that would be something cool to show the audience early on. But then it doesn't actually really, and that's the thing. If we had seen that skeleton very early in the movie, or we had seen it rise up, which is one of the things that the other movies show the skeletons outside of the climax, which is just, I get that we've had the reveal, we know that that's what it looks like, but that doesn't mean that you can't still, anyway. And that's the thing, he knew that had to happen near the very end. You can't keep a movie going very much after that without losing some of the tension. That's simply not, Now. And in the hallway, with the skeleton closing in on, the Terminator almost catches up to them. They only just barely close the door behind them in time. And again, if they hadn't closed the door, it would have managed to grab Sarah and kill her. It's another one of the times where the movie, I didn't keep count, but it's at least like 3 or 4 distinct times in the movie where if it hadn't worked out exactly right, the Terminator would have killed Sarah. And I miss that in the other movies. I feel like where is there something quite like that? But I'll get more into that when I talk about the sequels. I'm not going to spoil the sequels in this video. But yeah, if Sarah had been cold enough to just leave Kyle behind, she could have gotten away from the Terminator, but as we see, if she had done that, it would have killed her because he wouldn't have been able to blow the Terminator up. Let's see. I quite like the Sarah and Kyle are running away from the Terminator, and they've activated machines so that it would confuse its tracking, because do they outright say that it's motion tracking? I'm not entirely sure, but seemingly it's like motion tracking, like when there are robot arms moving, like if the Terminator's here and over there we go, and here there's like a robot arm and Sarah and Kyle over here, then if the robot arm is moving, then it can't if it was going by heat signature, presumably it wouldn't have trouble, but and then she accidentally presses that button and activates the press. That's that sets up the that both tells the when you first just see it, you just think, honey, be more careful, please. We get it, but we're like, But then when we see her, like, crawling away from the torso, maybe we don't really realize it until she's just gotten out. She's got her legs, like, and pulls them out and down, and then she yanks down the metal, like a covering thing. Somewhere around that last part, we realize that's the press. That's the one she accidentally activated right before. And so she reaches back and she just has to get to the right button, which, is, really, really great job on that. Now, and Sarah has to pull a piece of metal out of her leg. Let's see. When the Terminator torso crawls towards her, the music sounds like something out of a horror movie, and it fits perfectly. And this is it could easily have had a more horror movie score for more of the movie. I don't think it would have fit quite as well. And it has this kind of dark, but also it's not quite so overpowering. But here at the end, the music is overpowering. It feels like, it's like if you watch that in 1984 in the movie theater, and someone grabs you and pulls you out of your seat violently, just as that's happening, that's those two. Just watching that and being ripped out of your seat at that exact moment would produce about the same level of fear in you. That's all. At the end of the day, movies always have to, they have to get past the audiences. The audience knows that they're not. We're not. It's not like the first times they put up the movie theater and people ran away because a train was coming directly at the camera. We know it's not real. No matter what we're seeing on the screen, actually, it might be real, but it's not right in front of us. It's not, at most, what we're seeing is something real that we, something real, which might be uncomfortable for us to watch, but we do realize it's not right in front of us. It's not going to come out of the screen and attack us. But some stuff like that really does get past that, the audience knowing that in reality it can't hurt them. At most the characters they care about might be hurt, but that doesn't produce the same level of fear as when you think you yourself is in danger. Now, and the relief when she crushes the Terminator is unbelievable. It's like we've been holding our breath since the start of the movie, and finally we can, finally we can breathe again. And at the start of the movie, we were told, I believe May, certainly one of the early months, when the Reese asks the cop what the date, and he I think he says 12th May, Thursday, and here at the end we're told it's November, via Sarah recording the tapes. So it's a nice little, it's in place of having a X months later thing, And the movie is 99.5 minutes without end credits and 103 with. Now, that brings us to Notes taken before watching. Now, I most recently got the Collector's Edition DVD, which comes with several printed photos, including the Polaroid of Sarah that Kyle had taken at the end of the film. I quite appreciate that. That's, yeah. In general, it's a great set, but I did, I don't really review specific DVDs. I review movies and TV shows and games. But yeah, it's worth. You can look up what it has, and there are other people who do go into great detail talking about it. I'm only going to comment on some of it. Not going to go into great detail about what it has. The movie can feel like an exaggerated version of the anxieties of modern life. You don't quite understand what's going on, even if you do, it feels completely overwhelming. I really should have added commas to that sentence. You're almost entirely alone, and the only people you can depend on are emotionally damaged. Most people are powerless to help you, and many will call you crazy when you correctly identify the danger. The fate of the entire world depends on you, which makes you feel like you can't live up to it. Now, obviously the idea of an emotionless, genocidal machine exterminating nearly all human life via nukes, including making that decision in a second, was a far scarier idea in 1984 when the Cold War was going on and mutually assured destruction was assured. And Skynet is an obvious stand-in for the Soviet Union, with Terminators. They look, sound, smell just like real people, but they infiltrate and kill good people. When you realize they're not human, it's already too late, which is what Cold War propaganda said communist human beings were like. And some of the other, the invasion of the body snatchers, I think the original is called, which is still it's almost too bad that they I think they. Didn't they call it, like, I forget exactly, but I don't think it has quite that glorious title, which is very much, now that is a 50s, sci-fi movie title. That is like, if that movie had never been made, and, someone today wanted to make a movie called that, you would think they were crazy. But back then, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I believe it's from 1956. It's definitely from the 50s. There, literally, human beings are being replaced by these, that seem like human beings, but they're not. And obviously, that's also, that's what people genuinely feared would happen. That, Soviet agents that convince you that they're human get, close enough that you start, Now, let's see. And that's, later in this, I'm going to talk some about the Phil K. Dick story. The Second Variety, which was turned into the movie Screamers, which I have not watched. I might at some point, but Phil K. Dick movie adaptations, sometimes they're great. Absolutely. But sometimes they're not that, I might. But I reread it, just ending like a couple of days ago for this, so that I could talk about it in this video. And that was also written during the Cold War. And that one actually did think that, it posed a future in which there would be robots fighting, but the Cold War would still be going on. Really, before the Cold War ended, it really did seem like it might never end. Like, the human race would basically be extinguished by it, or that it would just last for forever. Because why would it ever end? Both sides had nukes. And we in the West didn't know how bad the Soviet economy was, because that was kept hidden. That is something that, when you read the works of the great late Philip K. Dick, that really is, his entire life as I'm almost 100% certain, he was born when the Cold War was already going on, and he died not very long, but he did die before the end, as far as I recall. Maybe, yeah, early 80s, I think. So that you can understand why some of his writing seems incredibly paranoid and anxious. Doesn't help that he was on drugs either, but I don't use drugs myself. I don't have a problem with people who do use. I didn't used to be particularly interested in stuff that people have done that's very inspired by drugs, but some of the stuff that he wrote that was very clearly inspired by drugs, yeah, is very, very, yeah. I think I may have done like a couple of videos on that. Like what was that one called? A present for Pat or something. It's just it's insane. And yeah. Now, let's see. Now, I acknowledge that the scene wherein dozens of police were violently killed is in part probably James Cameron working out some frustration with negative encounters with police from back when James Cameron had no money or power and was living in LA. That is not exactly a pleasant place to live if the authorities inherently treat you with mistrust. There are some places where, like, the police aren't that aggressive about, but yeah. Now, to some people, that makes it irredeemable. I'm not going to try to change those people's minds. You do you. But I do think there are noteworthy reasons why it is not merely bitterness. The scene accomplishes several things. Obviously, the audience already knows that Kyle Reese is correct. We saw the Terminator arrive from the future. We've seen point-of-view shots that make it clear it's not human but machine. And by the time the shootout happens, we've seen him remove an eye and cut open his arm. Yeah, it's a robot. No matter how hard it might be to buy in 1984. Let's see. We realize Dr. Silverman is mistaken, although you understand you understand why. But Sarah gets to confront the notion that maybe Kyle is wrong. And as we see, the cops think they've got it figured out and that she's safe, both of which are completely disproven in the shootout after they literally state them. It's underlined that Kyle is the only person that stands a chance of keeping her alive and thus winning the war. No matter where they had gone, the authorities would have believed that they had an explanation. That they would believe. These are not the only cops who would have doubted them. And despite the dozens of trained officers who are armed with assault rifles or shotguns, not all of them armed with, but the Terminator does indeed wade right through them, just like Kyle said he would. Kyle is the only one with the training and knowledge to be able to even slow down the Terminator with the weapons available in 1984. Also, after that many dead cops, if they did try to go to any authorities, even the military, who might have weapons that could do serious damage to the Terminator, there is no way that they can convince the authorities to help them. Dozens of dead cops, and only 3 people walked out of that place alive, and then 2 of them just happened to show up another place where the authorities have a base. Yeah, they're definitely getting interrogated and kept in a separate room where they're helpless to escape. Kyle was lucky to manage to escape in the police station. The movie is never as violent towards as large a group of people at any other point. Possibly in the bunker, and certainly there we don't see... It's not entirely clear how many soldiers there were there. We don't see that many, and it's not said. We do know for a fact that there are 30 officers in that building, and by the time the Terminator walks out to shoot at Sarah and Kyle there at the very end of it, not a single one is like still chasing the Terminator or shooting at him or anything. So, I think it's said somewhere that like 13 dead and 17 wounded something, but he's neutralized all of them. But yeah, it's a scene that really sells how humanity is almost exterminated by Skynet. The flying hunter-killer and the tank tread hunter-killer can't find every single base, not if they're hidden well enough. Both of them are too big to get into certain areas. But sooner or later, at least one person will leave each base, and then all it takes is Skynet having strategically placed enough Terminators around the world, keeping in mind there's no evidence that Skynet doesn't have nearly infinite resources, which is also something that was believed about the Soviet Union. There was no sign that they were having trouble with that. They were very careful to keep signs of that away from, and that's also something, in the second variety. Basically, there are these Terminator-like robots just outside in areas between, some of them relatively close to bases, some of them further away, and they look human. So the human being is like, I mean, you're not safe out here. I have to come with me. I know a place where we'll be safe. So that's probably what happened. I haven't seen anywhere for sure that James Cameron did read that short story, but certainly there are some similar ideas. So like I said in the vlog, I don't think there's any problem with having been inspired by something. I do think that the 2 episodes of Outer Limits with Harlan Ellison, James Cameron apparently said, at least back then, I don't know how he feels about it today, that he didn't think that they were taking ideas from those 2 Outer Limits episodes. He thought that Harlan Ellison just wanted money, and it's possible, but I do really, Harlan Ellison does really strike me as someone who took things very personally. I'm sorry, I forget. Did he die? R.I.P. If I really some of the stuff he wrote. I absolutely freaking love. But anyway, yeah, I could totally see why he would think that his 2 episodes inspired James Cameron a lot, but yeah. I think James Cameron might be someone who could do justice to adaptations of Philip K. Dick and scripts by Harlan Ellison. Especially 1984 James Cameron could, and 1986 James Cameron. He doesn't seem as like it's in this and in Aliens, he really seems to have these very dark sensibilities. He's willing to show stories where it seems like everybody is going to die, and yeah, just anyway, yeah, yeah, I think that was what right, yeah, keeping in mind Skynet might have nearly infinite resources. Steel is not hard to come by, and a robot building and maintaining effective factories is very easy to believe. And despite training and trying to push down emotions, basic human empathy will ensure that sooner or later, at least one person from each of these bunkers will take pity on what appears to be a human, in need. Now, the ending shows that the whole film is a time travel paradox. And I love it. And the sequels mess that up. I admit, as with any time travel paradox, of course there's the question of how did the paradox start? Now, something I forget where I read this, but someone suggested that originally Kyle Reese was not John Connor's father. Originally, someone else, impregnated Sarah, and she, so there was always a John Connor. But actually, regardless, you would still need to have the fact that we're told that John Connor was trained since childhood. That can only make sense if we, from the time travel paradox perspective, the idea that, because the reason she raises him to be a warrior from childhood is her experiences in this movie. So yeah. But let's say originally someone else impregnated her, and for some reason he accomplished something amazing, and the Spoony one wrote what's it called? Like not a script, but like a treatment, like a concept, where he says, the original John Connor, he was lucky and he saved some people and they were like, this guy's a hero. And then people started acting like he was the second coming, when really he got extremely lucky, but they needed someone to latch on to. Originally maybe the John Connor who was not fathered by Kyle Reese, I don't know, for some reason he was an incredible asset in the war against Skynet. And then he sent Kyle Reese back in time. The events of the movie happen, but they're not the events of the movie. Hold. Let's say that's the second iteration and the movie's the third iteration. So the second iteration happens, and because of that, because Kyle fathers John, which, that's necessary for the next, and because because of the experiences, Sarah realizes she must, she has to raise John to be an incredible warrior against the robots. So she does that from childhood. She doesn't wait until he's 18 to train him. Excuse me. And because of that, when we get to the third iteration, that John Connor, who, as you'll recall, was, the John Connor created under the conditions of the second iteration, because of that, the John Connor of the third iteration was raised to be a warrior since childhood, and that's the iteration we see in the movie. That's why Kyle can describe that he's this incredible warrior, and and maybe there's endless iterations, but ultimately, regardless, a John Connor grew up and helped defeat the machines, and because of that, the Terminator Skynet sent a Terminator back to 1984. The Resistance sent Kyle Reese back, and they managed to win, but then we get another iteration. And, because of that, it's not, it happens over and over, but it works out. Now, the sequels don't show the huge robots, not Hubots, as much, or they don't show them as being as dangerous. It focuses too much on armies of robot skeletons. Now, the massive ones with their thick armor, swift lasers, and ability to cover a lot of ground in a short space of time would obviously be far more effective than foot soldiers that happen to be metal. It's just that everybody loves seeing the skeleton at the end of the first movie. Nothing in the first movie suggests that they would actually have armies of metal skeletons just walking around like that. The reason it has a metal skeleton is that it used to look exactly like a human being. Once you know that it's a robot, it's no longer particularly effective because it's slow. Other than being metal, it has no advantages over just a human soldier. And according to the opening of the second movie, apparently they're not difficult to defeat with the standard plasma rifle that we see in the first two movies. I do also briefly want to say the moment that a human being sees a skeleton, we are hardwired to think of that as not dangerous in itself, but denoting danger. When we see a human skeleton, our reptilian brain immediately says, there's something nearby that can kill a human being. You have to get away from here or it'll get you too. So, and beyond that, seeing a moving skeleton, that adds this element of, this can't possibly be real. This is I don't know how to deal with this. And for it to then also be made of metal and have these glowing red eyes and this just, they didn't, it's an amazing design. It's no wonder that people still, I don't know if it's going to be in Terminator 6, but Terminator Genisys does show let's see. I suppose, Now, basically Kyle's plan is to keep hiding Sarah and stay on the run from the T-800 until she's given birth to and made a leader of John. He says he's not sure he can destroy the T-800 with the weapons of 1984. His plan wasn't to lower the T-800, lure, again, all these notes are voice typed, and sometimes I didn't proofread, the T-800 into a factory and crush it. They just ran in there to get away from it. If it had caught up to them, they would have tried to take care of hadn't caught up to them, then they would have tried to take care of Kyle's wounds and go back on the run. Now, and Sarah honestly thought that it wouldn't hurt to tell her mother, but it is possible that the T-800 would have at least had a hard time finding them, if not for that call she made. So at least it's not that they have a plan that would be so difficult to implement, but I acknowledge that it is perhaps convenient that they end up managing to destroy the Terminator in the way that it does, and let's see, it appears that they thought blowing up the tanker truck with the Terminator inside might destroy it. Kyle doesn't seem like, if he thought that the Terminator could still get up, he wouldn't be like holding Sarah near the fire. He would say, we have to keep moving. Presumably no one has ever managed to destroy all the flesh on a Terminator without also destroying it, If they had made up a plan to destroy it with 1984 weapons, I'm not sure where they would have gotten their hands on military-style weaponry that would be able to. In Terminator Genisys, they've had a long time, so it makes sense that they were able to. Now, but yeah, I'm not going to claim that it's not convenient. Ultimately, it's difficult to end a movie like this. Horror movies and movies where the thing that scares and chases and such keeps almost catching up and being really how do you make a satisfying conclusion to that? And I think that ultimately it's satisfying, but it does feel a little convenient that they did, the explosion just happened to be close to this, robot, this plant where, you have all these if not for the metal press, they wouldn't have been able to, And I guess that's what now, let's see, briefly, this I copied in from my, I was taking notes for Alita before I watched the movie, and I realized I should maybe put this in this video as well, since if you watch that one, I spoil Alita the movie, and you may not be wanting spoilers for Alita the movie, only the Terminator, so put it here. Now, I was making a comparison of Robert Rodriguez and James Cameron. The first movie they made had intense, disturbing flashbacks, which is unusual. In both cases, it was to make up for limitations. On the first Terminator movie, James Cameron realized he would not be able to set the entire movie in the future with the killer robots. But he also realized that since we spend most of the movie in the present, we will need several impactful flashbacks to the future war. Otherwise, too little of the film would show us robots. Most of the time, Arnold doesn't look like a robot. He just keeps coming back no matter what they do to stop him, which is not exactly unique to robotic 80s action stars. Very little running time is devoted to these flashbacks, and ultimately you don't see all that many individual robots. And yet they do sell to the audience that this is a future truly overrun by robots. We don't see a massive army of robots until the second movie, and that's, yeah. I mean, when you watch this movie, I mean, obviously, you know, what's it called? Diminishing returns or whatever it's called. You know, the more you watch the movie, the more you get used to it, the less effective it. I personally find, as long as you know, I mean, basically, the way I see it, just pretend that there's nothing else. This is you haven't seen any movie that came out after this movie. And when you're watching this movie, the rest of the world doesn't exist. And, you know, don't watch it with someone who's going to ruin your enjoyment of it. And there you go. You know, once all of that, it's, I don't know. I realize not everyone does. And I don't have it's not that way for me with every movie. But yeah, if you watch it like that, then just it you know, you don't end the movie and you sit there like, you know, there's actually only X amount of robots in the movie. We don't see very many. So technically, it's not, you know, yeah, you know, so sometimes, but ultimately you know, the movie does convince you. The movie, the way it's cut, you know, the part of it, one of the things is just the way that in the future they're always hiding, they're always crawling along, you know, they're always taking cover and such. So it, you know, that makes it all that much more convincing. And yeah, anyway. Now, Feminist Frequency Radio, episode 29, Invest in Sassy Droids, had a... They talked about this movie for 20 minutes or so. Now, Ebony and Carolyn both love the two actors playing cops and would watch 6-season miniseries about them as cops in LA. And Ebony says 30 years later, it's still terrifying to see the Terminator crawling towards Sarah right before she crushes it. And they talk about that Arnold Schwarzenegger is supposed to be the pinnacle of human strength, that we see him and we're impressed and scared because he's so much stronger than we are. And also watched the Renegade Cuts episode on the Terminator. Don't really have anything to say in that. Good video, but almost all of his. I suppose I should just briefly say I don't watch the ones of his that are labeled Dice Punk, I want to say one of them is called, and Word Funk. Is that it? Whatever. You know, I think you know what I'm talking about. Those I do not watch at all, so I cannot vouch for anything in those. Actually, I think there was one time where they talked about Batman v Superman. That was pretty awesome, but that was the only one I watched. And it was because they were talking about Batman v Superman. They tore it apart, which I quite enjoyed. One second. Yeah, other than that, I'm not saying every single video. You know, certainly there are a few that I don't think very highly of, but by and large, I love his videos. Now, there's this documentary called The Cutting Edge, which, I mean, I own it because it came with, you know, I bought Bullet on DVD, which is an excellent movie. And it was like, it had 2 DVDs, and one of those 2 DVDs had this, I think it's like 90-minute documentary called The Cutting Edge. If you can't get it there, I don't know how you would get it. I don't know if it's ever on TV or whatever. Netflix, whatever. However, James Cameron talks about the Terminator. Talks about suspense and action. In the Terminator movies, I'm just going to quote him. In the Terminator movies, I use suspenseful build-up to an action release. Since our ancestors survived by getting away from predators, there's still something in the reptilian brain that tells us we have to get away from threats. So there's a catharsis in being chased and in car chases. I don't think that's exactly word for word what he said, but that was what yeah. Now, some notes from my own old vlog about the movie. Now, again, I'm not going to quote what I said in that vlog just like that. I'm only going to go into stuff that I have where I want to comment on something I said, because my old vlog is still up. You don't have to watch it if you don't, for whatever, maybe you don't like how many times I dropped the F-bomb in it, but I don't have any plans to redo that video because I'm happy with, there are a couple of things I want to comment on and possibly correct, but let's see. Yes, I mentioned in it that, the Terminator jumps at them, smashes his arm through the window, grabs her and starts pulling, he grabs her shirt and starts pulling her closer. And that if Kyle hadn't made the spin with the car, throwing the Terminator off, the Terminator would have murdered her. If he had managed to pull her honestly, I wrote 5 to 10 centimeters. Honestly, I think 3 would have done it. By the time he has a hold on her shirt, and she's and she's trying to pull away from him. But if he had a few more seconds, okay, let's say this is the shirt and this is the Terminator's hand, and Sarah Connor's over here. He grabs the shirt and pulls her a little closer, and then let's go with the shirt and maybe punches through the shirt in her chest. There, that's it. Let's see. If he had managed to pull her just a little closer herself, he'd been able to snap her neck, rip out her throat, or the like. The only reason he doesn't do these is literally that he can't quite reach her, and it's slow for him to get closer. He's lying on his chest on a car that's moving fast. That is there's literally he is incredibly effective. He almost gets her, and that's something. I feel like there are too many movies similar to this where I just don't feel like the killer does well enough. It's too easy for his targets to get away, and obviously, if his targets, the movie, like what Cameron said about the reptilian brain. When we watch a movie and we see someone being chased but escaping, it's releases endorphins or whatever. It has, it's something that we as audience members enjoy seeing. So if the killer is too effective, then we never have a chase. But too many movies don't manage to balance it. Here we have chases, but the Terminator is also incredibly effective. Really, the reason he doesn't manage to kill them much sooner is that they're always a lot of the time they're driving and he's driving, they're shooting and he's shooting, and a bunch of bullets are fired without any, without Kyle being hit, without Sarah being hit, without the Terminator being hit. But that's because, if you actually look at, I'm not saying go out and try it unless, well, no, I'm not saying go out and try it because that would be dangerous no matter how you do it, but just think about it. Just think about how difficult it is to accurately aim. Think about how difficult it is to be doing something that accurate in a car. Try taking good cell phone video of yourself while a car is driving really fast or something. Just, you're not going to be able to, so they're basically, I mean, it's what's that term? Spray and pray, basically. Now, let's see. Yeah, but, he's lying on his chest on a car that's moving fast. One of the first and last ways it attacks her is on its chest, trying to grab her with one outstretched arm. But yeah, maybe I'm remembering wrong, but I don't recall anything as, anything quite like that in the other Terminator movies. I never completely believed that the evil Terminator almost kills its target. And that's true of the very first times that I watched those movies. Just never completely. And I mean, I guess I get it. If they end the first one, they're not going to end the sequels in tragedy. Although technically there are elements of tragedy in some of them, but they're not going to go all the way into just really deep tragedy in the sequels when they didn't in the original, which is another good reason not to make sequels. The way I see it, I don't mind that there's more than one Terminator movie. I mind that more than one of them is called Terminator. If the second Terminator movie had been called, let's go with Terminizer, why not? Sometimes Homer Simpson has good ideas. The Terminizer Judgment Day. And, people would be like, that is very similar to this other movie that James Cameron also made. But it wouldn't screw up all this stuff that is perfectly set up in this movie. Just, yeah. Now, in the vlog I also mentioned the I love you too, sweetheart thing. Think about how easily that line could have bombed. It could have been unintentionally hilarious. We are seeing this big masculine man speaking with a frail woman's voice and saying the words, I love you and sweetheart. But James Cameron knew he could make it work, and he did. I mean, I've seen movies that try to sell like something creepy like that, and where you just end up laughing. Now, I talked some about the effects that they hold up pretty well, except that it's obvious when it's not really Arnold, it's a rubber replica. Now, when I think we only see it for so little time there at the end that works. There when he's driving the truck at the end, we never see the rubber dummy of Arnold's face for so long that we're like, wait, that's not actually, that's a dummy, But so here I'm talking about the scene where he repairs himself, where you see him cut out the eye and such. I wish that, where the close-up of the eye is convincing. And the stuff where it's Arnold pretending to cut his eye, but, the blade of the scalpel is removed, which if you look very carefully, you can, some of the time you can see he's got the scalpel stick, but like the blade out at the end, they took that thing off, so he's just got, so he can just be standing there, and if you can't see, then it looks like he's cutting in his eye. That works. But let's see. But yeah, the close-up where we only see that the eye is literally being picked out and removed is fine, because we don't see enough of his face for... I wrote the Uncanny Valley effect, but I guess that's not technically it, because it's not supposed to look entirely human at that point. Anyway, yeah, for us to realize, yeah. Now, yeah. And I've said it before, but it bears repeating. Some people seem to not understand the reason that the Terminator leaves the cop car when Kyle is arrested and only shows up again at the police station. We see him cut the broken eye from his face and cut open his arm. Clearly the broken, and when you see cut open his arm, that's the part I don't understand. Like, are people, do they go, does everybody go for a bathroom break at that exact time? You see, like, let's say that this was the Terminator's arm. You see that part of it here is like, you see that the flesh is gone, you see some metal. He cuts it open, and we see like these, like, metal, what's it called? Like sticks. And he pulls, he moves his fingers, and we see them move in there. Then he grabs pliers, grabs the part of his like index finger, and he pulls it back out. How can you watch that and not understand his trigger finger was broken? Yes, he can use, yeah, I've conveyed. I'm going to go back to the notes. Yeah, we see him cut the broken eye from his face, cut open his arm. Clearly, the broken eye was getting in the way of the red robot camera eye, meaning his vision was impaired. Possibly, if that thing blocked his eye completely, that's his vision being impaired by 50%. I mean, if a couple of robot arms moving can keep him from recognizing his target from, I mean, it's not that far away. Yeah, I'm sure the eye can, we have to remember that ultimately the eye that we see when we look at it, the fake one that's grown for the cyborg, I mean, I guess it's basically see-through to him. Like maybe it's like two-way glass or whatever it's called. It's see-through to him. So the moment that it's not see-through, we're not talking about, his eye is a little messed up. No, it's like try to hold your hand in front of your eye for just a few seconds and see if it doesn't bother you. And you're not a robot. And if you are, I would like to welcome our robot overlords. Now, and you can clearly tell that his right arm's trigger finger does not work properly before he cuts the arm open and fixes it. Yes, we do see not long after that he can fire guns with either hand, but that means that he was down in efficiency by 50%, and he clearly believes that he needs 100% because he brings a gun in each hand to the police station. In addition to bringing a gun in each hand, look at the two guns he chooses. Before this, he relied largely on the pistol with the laser sight. And when Kyle attacks him in the club, we see that he brought the Uzi, he just had it under his, he had that on him as well. What does he bring when he goes to the police station? He brings an assault rifle and the Spaz 12. That is a very powerful shotgun. Clearly he expects to need as much, he needs to operate at full efficiency. So yeah, he fixes his trigger finger and his eye, and it's the first time he dual wields guns. In other words, if he had attempted to shoot or rush over to Kyle and Sarah, he might have ruined his chances by his impaired vision and right hand functionality not operating at 100% efficiency. If all the cops who were already aiming at him, Kyle and Sarah, saw him rushing over towards them, they might shoot him since it would be clearly apparent that he was about to attack. That might have further damaged him since the damage he took was by being shot at, and that was by being shot at while in a car that was moving fast. Being shot at from another car that was moving fast. All the cops that are they're lined up, they're aiming right there, and he's gonna just bolt out of his car and run? No, obviously not. And again, his trigger finger was broken. It's possible that when his trigger finger got damaged, that the gun flew from his hand. So there's, yeah. And it certainly would have meant that the police would be on the lookout for him even if he did get away. In that case, the cop at the front desk, if he tried to make an entrance like that, and if he didn't make an entrance like that, he does that to, as quickly as possible, get to find out where Sarah is or get to Sarah. The cop at the entrance would immediately call for backup. At that point, they couldn't really slow down. One second. What did I write? I apologize for the dead air, but I need to reread the. Oh, right. No, I think I forgot to proofread this. Let's see. Yeah, I think, yeah. At that point, they could really slow down the Terminator, and Kyle and Sarah might be released by them and get away before he gets too close. Instead, the way he attacked the police station is what would appear to have the greatest chance of working. He methodically goes through the police station and would in fact have reached Sarah if Kyle hadn't been able to get out of his handcuffs. Now, there's this thing, yeah, in talking about the effects that I don't think, that, the few effects that don't quite hold up in the original vlog. One that I didn't mention that I've gone back and forth on this one, but the thing is, when the Terminator reaches his hand into one of the gang members at the very start, and then he pulls it out, I'm not entirely sure if that's supposed to be that he rips the heart out, because what I would basically say is it looks like he stuck his hand into a deep puddle of blood and we're seeing it immediately after he pulls it back out, which makes sense if he didn't grab the heart. If he just stuck his hand inside, there's a lot of blood in there, that's how the hand would look. If hypothetically, let's say that it's supposed to be the heart cut out, instead of us immediately seeing the hand, cut to a reaction shot of one of the punks and then use like a splotchy sound effect for him crushing it in his hand, and then shows the hand as what's left. But yeah, I mean, if it's not supposed to be the heart ripped out, just supposed to be a lot of blood, I reread the drafts. I don't remember if they all agree on this point, but some of them say it's just supposed to be a lot of blood. He pulls the hand back out and it's completely covered in blood. And I think the fact that his hand is in a fist, that makes us think that he grabbed something in there and excuse me. I always thought that the idea was that he was supposed to be holding a heart somewhat like this, and then, they couldn't, that was where they couldn't quite make something that looked very convincing like a heart. So instead, they just had him hold his hand like that. But I mean, I guess it does look enough like his just completely closed fist. I think the thing is that maybe James Cameron didn't realize that people would expect that it was like ripping his heart out or something, so he didn't think of doing something that would make it clear that that isn't what it's supposed to be. When we see someone, stick a hand into someone's chest like that, we figure, oh, he's ripping his heart out. And then it's like, I think that I think it would have been a good idea if just, let's say that he, instead of just punching out like this, maybe he just, we see him reach his hand, he sticks his hand directly in and then pulls it out like that or something, but yeah. Now, there's a part of the video where I say that I think it's really cool how the Terminator pulls a carry on the cop at the desk before the police station shootout. Obviously, I meant to say Christine. I guess I was channeling Tony Stark from that one part of the first Iron Man movie. In my defense, Carrie and Christine are both adaptations of Stephen King stories directed by beloved directors, and both do have at least one incredibly iconic scene. But yeah, in case you watched that and you didn't realize I meant Christine, and you've been trying to figure out what part of Carrie I could possibly be talking about, that's what I'm, for people, if someone hasn't watched Christine in a long time and maybe forgot, in Christine there is also a shot where we have a car like driving directly into someone, like almost crushing them. Now, one more thing I say is in the vlog is that maybe it's straining credulity that Kyle would fall in love with Sarah from John Connor telling him stories, or from looking at the picture a lot or something. But I would say that she falls for him because he protects her. He makes her feel safe. He's devoted to her. He gets along with her son. That last part was a joke. If he had lived for years after, maybe their relationship would have changed. It's more that she's in love with him than it being what Tim Minchin aptly describes as creepy-uppy kind of love. Now, yeah, I don't really have anything to say to this. I just want to direct your attention. If you can... Did she recently re-upload? I think she might have. She is gradually re-uploading her old... Lindsay Ellis is gradually re-uploading her old Nostalgia Chick videos. And the one for Titanic, she does talk about... James Cameron writing women. And I think she does a great analysis, and I don't really have anything to add to. Now, let's see. Now, there's an episode of Obsessive Pop Culture Disorder called Why the Terminators Are Probably Just Sex Robots. I want to, just a brief side note, I don't think love is too strong a word. I love crack videos, and I hope they at some point start making them again. And I mean, the most recent, all they've done is just uploading that, what's it called, people watching, which, that's fine, but I really hope they start making the, Obsessive Pop Culture Disorder, and those discussions where they sat in a diner and such. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just briefly, I think... Maybe I'll regret this later, but just briefly, I'm just gonna go over some of the things he says and like stuff that, thinking about it, I guess some of this might. It's not apologism, but it does come close to just, the video is probably not meant to be taken seriously, but just briefly. He says, why would you get guns instead of just choking Sarah Connors? The moment one of them runs away from him, he's going to need that gun. As for not avoiding a lot of people realizing he's there, the Terminators come from a time where you can't really communicate over large distances. As such, it would not realize that word would spread about its killings. It's used to going around clearing bunkers one by one. By the time someone has heard that a bunker was cleared by the Terminator, the Terminator's long gone, and there's no physical description because no one survived it. He questions why they need time travel, because they simply could not win against the guerrilla tactics. The only way to win the war was for John Connor to never have existed. I mean, just look at, read a history book and look at how, important military commanders can either win or lose major wars that, when you think about it, how could they possibly have done that or not done that? Just that John Connor is one of those. It's not a difficult concept to understand. And several of the things he mentions are only problems because the movie's past the first one. If you ignore at least the sequels, let's see. then you only have a few problems. And then there are a couple of his points that I agree with, especially the ones raised by the sequels. Now, let's see. Yeah, so again, I'm not gonna review these. I'm just gonna. This is stuff I have to say to the. Let's see. This is off the Ultimate Edition, I believe it's called, of the DVD edition, 2-disc. Unstoppable Force: The Legacy of the Terminator. Jonathan Mostoff talks about, he watched the first movie when it came out and loved it, not because he cared about robots or time travel, but the dramatic tension that was in the movie and the way that the story was being told. And this is a direct quote, I said, that's the kind of movies I want to be making. See, that kind of thing, I'm gonna try to be fair to him. I'm gonna try to reevaluate his Terminator sequel. And they talk about how amazing the I'll be back one-liner works, and that the second movie tries to copy it with Hasta La Vista, but it was nowhere near as successful, even though it was successful. Stuart Gordon says the future battles were maybe 1 minute of screen time, but they were impressive and showed the scale of it, and that's all he needed. I'm not sure exactly who said this, but this is again a direct quote. I love that the movie runs headlong into the time travel paradox because it knew that you can't possibly avoid it being insane when you have time travel. If it's not insane, it's not interesting. The sexy scene is one of the only times the movie has room to breathe. Talked about that movies today are much more relentless. I would still say the movie is relentless, even by today's standards, but I mean, there are movies where more happens in a shorter space of time. Maybe that's what they mean, but yeah. And Stuart Gordon, there have been a million clones of the movie The Terminator, but none of them with the purity of vision of the movie The Terminator. He might have just said The Terminator, but just, yeah. That's the thing, when the term The Terminator just, it can refer to the titular character, it can refer to the movie, specifically the movie. Yeah. Excuse me. My back. There we go. Now, then there's the Terminator closer to the real thing. James Cameron, I love and hate technology. I love the engineering side, but I also hate the feared consequences. And they talk about the Terminator predicting a bunch of stuff, such as using robots in warfare, and how great science fiction predicts how things will look in the future. I have been going on for over 2 hours. I may... Well, there's at least one more section. Yeah, anyway. Let's see. There is... Right, and then there's this guy at MIT who built a robot that can learn to walk, not just walk normally, but can actually figure out if the way it's walking makes sense for the terrain it's working on. And there are robotic killer soldiers, and the question's been raised, can we let a robot soldier kill a person on its own decision? And then there is the Terminator, a retrospective, which is long. So there's a bunch of stuff here. Now, yeah, James Cameron, quote, before Arnold Schwarzenegger was cast, the idea was that the Terminator was an anonymous guy, someone who could disappear into the crowd after killing you for seemingly no reason, other than who you were going to become in years to come. That changed when Arnold Schwarzenegger was cast because he doesn't disappear into the crowd, so it became hyperbolic. You knew he wasn't human. And Arnold and James Cameron say, when he draws the gun, fires it, and puts it back, there's no wasted movement. It's completely smooth, not jerky, because that wastes energy. Part of the fun of the nightclub scene is that the audience knows that these two guys are armed and they're in the crowd. All hell is going to break loose. Now, let's see. Arnold came up with the idea. The Terminator moves his eyes, then the rest of his head to follow, then his eyes again, so it's like a surveillance camera. Excuse me. And James Cameron says, me and Stan Winston made a decision not to do a man in a suit. And I am incredibly grateful for that. Man, that would have been just, yeah. Not a single one of them is a man in a suit. You know, not the Terminator himself, and not either of the hunter-killer types that we see. The hunter-killers are, let's see, are they both stop motion? I think they're both stop motion, but I forget. No, wait, no, sorry. Some parts of the tank tread one, they actually built the thing that could actually move. It just, you know, it was much smaller than it looks. Now, let's see. We show the glimpses of the future war from the perspective of Kyle Reese, and then contrasted it with the mundane life of Sarah Connor before they meet, so that there's this, yeah, you know, her life will never be the same again, but there at the start, it's very innocent. And it says, at first Sarah is very feminine. The more Sarah realizes what her role in preventing the future will be, she becomes harder and tougher, and by the end you buy she can do this. Oh wait, sorry. Other Voices was the documentary I was thinking of. Let's see. Excuse me, there's something brief I have to do. There we go. Apologies for the dead air. I think I might write in the description about skipping that or something. Let's see, so around 2 hours and 18 minutes, 30 seconds. Okay, here we go. Other Voices documentary, which is also on the special edition DVD. So if you hear me talking about that and you're like, I want that, but I don't care about the Ultimate Edition, then yeah. There we go. Yeah, James Cameron tells us that he said to a fellow writer that, because he wanted to make sure that Arnold Schwarzenegger was not in the movie. He didn't want, so he said to this writer he was living with, I'm going to go pick a fight with Arnold. Pick a fight with Arnold. If it doesn't work out, you can have the chair in the stereo. And it was difficult to talk Arnold's agent into him playing the Terminator once both Arnold himself and Cameron wanted it. Excuse me, I just gotta fix them. There we go. And Stan Winston explains that at first he was like on a high horse, but then he saw the drawing of the endoskeleton, he read the script, and he went from sitting on a high horse to someone who really badly wanted to work on the movie. And let's see. And James Cameron says to Arnold Schwarzenegger, we did the first movie on a budget of the motorhome you lived in for the second movie, or your oatmeal budget. And he also says, when we filmed the steel fist punching through the window, the rig was too heavy for us to move the car, so we were moving the brick wall behind the car. And Michael Biehn, he says here, and he also says in, what's it called? Michael Biehn Remembers the Terminator or something, I think. The most physical thing I saw happen on the movie. And in that video, I think he also describes it as one of the most physical stunts he's ever seen. I forget if he does that here. When I arrived through time travel, the stunt guy had to fall for 6 feet and land on his back and shoulder on cement. Cement does not give. And I mean, I don't know, but I hope that guy did not get permanently hurt. I hope that it didn't hurt his body. It just, I hope that it was only painful, not painful and damage. I shouldn't get into it, but there's this quote: "Pain is temporary, film is forever," and I hope that what it is that there were some days where he was like, oh man, it hurts so badly, and then once the movie came out, he took his family to the movie theater, and the moment that Kyle fell out from the time travel, he nudged his wife and said, that was me doing that fall. And that she was really impressed. That's what I hope, because that I'm really, really grateful that he did it, because it looks amazing. And at this point, James Cameron hadn't decided that the time travel would automatically place you on the ground. In the second one, it certainly appears that time travel, by definition, the time travel just it makes this sphere that just burns away anything that might be standing there, and you arrive on like the ground floor. Which, I mean, if it was like inside of a building and then some of the stuff above the bubble would start tumbling down, then you'd still get hurt. But anyway, let's see. And someone in this documentary pointed out that Arnold gets his eyebrows burnt off, and I think in the documentary they say that he has no eyebrows for the rest of the movie, but I'm not entirely sure it's the rest of the movie. But anyway, when I looked at that, and I was reminded it really does have a dehumanizing effect. You expect people to have eyebrows. And Stan Winston basically talked to James Cameron into drawing detailed drawings of nearly every detail of the endoskeleton, where Cameron basically wanted him to do it or someone else to, and then I don't know, Jim, we can't quite crack this. Can you like explain it to us and draw it to us or something? eventually he had drawn the whole thing. And Stan Winston felt that they needed a dummy of Arnold to sell the robot, and yeah, it's too bad it's not quite convincing when he's dealing with the eye, but it is convincing when it's used in the truck near the end. It cuts to the dummy, so the cuts to it are so brief, and the scene is so intense that it isn't, yeah. And one of the effects guys says James Cameron wanted the lasers to look like they had complexity and depth, not just a single line, which, yeah, we've certainly seen a lot of those. And another, I forget if it's the same effects guy. An effects guy says, we couldn't blow up a truck in real life on camera, so we had to do it in miniature. And since we already filmed the burning wreckage before we did the effects, we had to make sure the exploding truck matched perfectly the burning wreckage. We couldn't do it the other way around. That's really, because, yeah, principal photography was done first. And Brad Fiedel, composer of I think basically all the music in the movie that isn't like songs that already come out or something, but especially, he made the theme. They told me I would be doing music for a low-budget action movie, and I'd done those. Most of the time, the filmmakers would excitedly describe the movie, and then I would watch the movie and think, where's this movie he was describing? I guess I kind of see it here. But with this movie, what James Cameron said was actually true of the movie. And also Brad Fiedel said, when there was the explosion near the end, I said, if he gets up one more time, I'm leaving. I thought I only thought it in my head, but I said it out loud, and I was certain that I lost the job. I was fired. I'm really glad that James Cameron didn't fire me. He might have been like, I appreciate the honesty of this guy, or he too thinks that the movie is working or something. But it's and I think he was fairly young at the time, so hadn't had as much time to hone his ability to suppress being excited at the wrong time and such. So, yeah. And James Cameron says, it's a movie that says we've become so dehumanized that a machine could pass for human so easily in our society. And that's, yeah. And Michael Bean says, he can do everybody's job better than they can. And I tell myself, he can act, as far as I know. So he's always going to need us, and us meaning actors. And he's talking about James Cameron. Now, on to the trailers. The regular trailer has a really excellent build-up to showing Arnold as the Terminator. It shows the hunter killers, shows the Terminator endoskeleton. The skeleton. And the teaser pans across and zooms in on the drawing Cameron did after meeting Arnold, him as the Terminator, which is quite clever. The international trailer focuses some on Kyle in addition to the Terminator. It doesn't show the skeleton, which I do think is something you shouldn't see until you see the movie. I really wonder how well these trailers did, selling it so differently to Americans from the rest of the world. And the first TV spot also goes into both Terminator and Kyle. Now, let's see. Deleted scenes. Now, let's see. Yeah, first without commentary, and I already said, but yeah, great deleted scenes and extended scenes and such. Let's see. In a deleted scene, we see Sarah call her mother from a payphone, not giving any information, only telling her she has to go to the cabin, which is of course where the Terminator finds and kills her. And ultimately, we don't need to see that phone call because the Terminator posing as her mother says, "You tell me to do this." We don't need to have seen that conversation take place. We accept that that's something that took place. And Sarah finds Cyberdyne in the phone book, and like she says we have to try to blow it up, and he says it's tactically dangerous, and and she tries to run away from him, and she punches him, and by reflex he pulls a revolver on her. Obviously it's not that he thinks that it would be a good idea to shoot her, but he's just so used to responding to violence with violence. Sarah says that one of the things she would like to share with Kyle is hot dogs, and he's like, hot dogs? And really, if you just hear the name hot dogs and you know what dogs are and you know what heat is, it is going to confuse you, especially if you haven't heard of them until you're a grown man. There's something like that in at least one of the treatments as well, but I'll get to that. Now, deleted scenes with commentary. James Cameron explains why he edited out the scenes, each of them, and why he doesn't think that they should go back into the main cut. That's the beauty of it. I have an infantryman who says, I didn't build the thing, and a waitress who just can't pretend to understand the technology, and they have to deal with it. You can't just say, well, I don't work with machines, so they won't affect me. Sooner or later, they will affect you, and in the words of James Cameron, you have to deal with it. I agree. It's very smart. A lot of movies like this would have had like the scientist who made it, and like a soldier who's not a big deal yet, but will in the future or something. Now, the abridged script. I'm not going to claim that this script makes no good points about the movie, and I do think overall it's... they have worse scripts on the site. No, it's not the worst, whatever. I didn't think it was all that compelling, and I've liked some that they've done on movies that I really love. I think the one they did on Widows is quite good. Anyway, I'm not trying to do any apologisting. I do think some of the things mentioned here are easy to explain, and that the scripts are funnier when the jokes aren't so easily taken apart by paying attention to the movie. Let's see. Yeah, one thing is even though Linda knows that some psycho is going around killing women named Linda Hamilton, she decides to go out alone. When she goes out, she only knows about one of the killings. She finds out about the second killing in the bar that she goes to when she goes out, and at that point she makes logical reactions to it. She also goes out not long after the guy calls off the date, so she was already going out. She would feel like she was wasting a Saturday evening if she stayed at home. Not to mention, she definitely knows that Matt and Ginger are gonna bone, so yeah, she doesn't want to, be a couple of rooms away from that. Yeah, I'm just briefly gonna. Yeah, I gotta read the dumb script lines out, otherwise you're not gonna know what I'm responding to. Arlen slowly approaches Linda and slowly pulls out his gun and slowly aims at her forehead and slowly starts to pull the trigger. A little later, Michael finishes drinking his mojito before he decides to jump in and put Arnold from lit. A little later, I kind of just sat there like a dork while Arnold stuck a gun in my face, so maybe I don't want to live. The entire sequence is presented in slow motion, and as such, the Terminator is not moving slowly, it is only appearing to be slow to the audience. And this is obviously done to build up tension, which it succeeds in doing. I don't know why some people have such a hard time comprehending the fact that James Cameron uses slow motion to build up suspense. It's not, he does it well. It's not like he's only done it once in his career. I really don't understand that. The scene only moves in normal speed when they start shooting, and at that point they are, yeah. From later in the script, he's right, Michael. Animatronic Arnold is moving pretty slowly. We could just run away and call the cops. They have no choice but to leave our store now. How are they going to destroy the metal skeleton? They might detain Sarah and Kyle since they were at the scene when 30 officers were killed, or 30 officers were attacked at least, slowing them down and getting them killed. These are movie cops, after all. Besides, at this point, Kyle is dying from his wound and can't move very fast. You don't actually expect Sarah to just leave him behind to die. I'm sorry, I can't read this next one. Just what he's doing. It's the part where he's crawling towards her, and the script is like joking that he's no longer scary. And yeah, just briefly, yeah, just to point out, he can very nearly grab her face with the metal arm, and if he could reach, he could very easily just, if he, let's say he grabs like the front of her, just the front of her skull and starts crushing it. She might not die from that initial, but yeah, once he's done that, and if he can move even further. The only reason that the Terminator can't reach her is that she pulled down the cover thing, and he can still almost reach her. Let's hypothetically say that she hadn't pressed the button. If it genuinely could not reach her from where it was, it might have, deduced that and then just ripped off the cover. It's not like that would have been impossible for it to do. It was just surprised, and for the first couple of seconds, it tries to grab her instead. And obviously, they're not going to have it try to pull the thing off and then have her crush it. For its hand to be like right here, right next to her, when she crushes it, that's more exciting, obviously. Let's see. She can't move very fast because she's got a hunk of metal. She literally just pulled out a hunk of metal from her leg. Now, let's see. Now, there's this brief comment exchange in the, let's see. Yeah, just, actually, I guess I shouldn't give this away since it spoils some of the other movies. So I'm just gonna, I'll skip past. I'll just try to remember not to put it in a later file. 1 second. Let's see. Now, I made some comments on the 2 Outer Limits episodes. Now, first, Soldier. I respectfully disagree with the people who don't think there was any inspiration for Terminator from this. Just look at the very first shots with the lasers that look distinctly like those of Terminator. Add to that the idea of 2 dehumanized future soldiers traveling back in time, one not being able to cope with our present, and then fighting each other. Just, I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a chance that James Cameron hadn't watched the episode when he was working on the Terminator. Or maybe he himself doesn't think that's where he got those ideas. I don't know. I gotta say, I can't hear the Outer Limits spoken intro without thinking of UHF, the song and movie. Think about it, I'm not sure what the 2 soldiers were doing running at each other instead of trying to shoot each other. Were they going for a Rocky III ending shot? And see, that's something, you don't see anything like that in Terminator. If 2 characters can shoot each other, they're not going to just randomly run at each other. And I'm not saying, I do think it's a very, very good episode, but that is the kind of thing where it's like, why are they behaving like that? And like, you can sit as an audience member and say, this does not convince me. The characters are acting in a way that has me, Another connection is that the enemy soldier groaning and being stuck between time periods sounds like a lot like Arnold Schwarzenegger groaning in other of his roles. And yes, that was a joke. Demon with a Glass Hand is the other episode. So, there's a war in the future. The non-human enemy is seemingly unstoppable and infinite. There's a time machine sending people to the present, including the one good guy, and one person is humanity's last hope. Definitely sounds a lot like Terminator. And more similarities, then there's a woman he keeps safe, but he also needs her help. They end up developing feelings for each other, and by the end it's revealed that something that looks exactly like a human being is actually a robot. Now, excuse me. Here are the notes I had from the treatment. The original, I really should have written that down. I think it's from 1982. The first is from 82, the second is from 83, and the third is from 84. And all of them are from before the movie came out, at least. I don't think anything of it is written after the movie came out. After they made the movie, that's what I mean. Now, in the original 1982 one, there were supposed to be two human time travelers, but one of them materialized inside the fire escape, and Reese has to choke him out by covering his mouth and nostrils, which the man agrees to. Excuse me, this is before James Cameron had the idea that time travel simply burns away anything that's not occupying the spot, like we see in the second movie. Originally, Reese was supposed to vault trash cans, hurdle fences, dive over parked cars with incredible agility when running from the cops at the start, and he was supposed to take out the cop in a series of spinning kicks. And there was supposed to be a police dog, a Doberman, which he grabbed by the throat and ear in the air, I think, when it leaps. And he doesn't even have to kill it when he releases it. It just backs away from him, confused. Now, the treatments specify that Ginger is an aerobics instructor, which helps explain why she's always listening to the Walkman cassette player, and dancing often and such, and and apparently I think she and Sarah are like college, I think, or at least Sarah and I think Matt, and also in 100 Years Who's Going to Care is like. In at least one of these treatments, it's something Sarah says, not, what's her name, Nancy, the other waitress. When the news says that Sarah Connor was killed, the real Sarah Connor's mother called her out of worry, which helps set up she's going to be part of the movie, which, in the final movie, she left a message on the answering machine, but, that was, actually, I don't think we really hear any of what is said, but it's also a very short message, so I don't think she can't have said very much. So I doubt that was the one that was a call she made after hearing the news. But yeah, in the treatment, it's specifically Sarah's mother calls after the news hit of another Sarah Connor, and I think it happens almost right after, like. Very, very soon after, so she saw it in the news. And Sarah actually does go on a date. The date doesn't cancel. It does turn out to be a bad date, we're told, after it's over. He's always talking about his job, and, it's a bad date. We are told. And it's explained. And the Terminator leaps over trash cans and other obstacles, bounding after Sarah and Reese like a panther right out of the nightclub. Which, and let's see, I forget. I think in the original treatment she doesn't leave the bar is the thing, rather than, I forget. And rather than imitate the voice of the cop, it uses, Actually, I'm not entirely sure about that anymore, but the cop was supposed to have like this clear southern. Actually, I guess he does a little bit in the movie. Anyway. And when Kyle explains things to Sarah, he'll start sentences with "see" and "yeah," which I don't know. I don't think he does that in the movie. And I also know that in the police station, which shows Sarah's mother's on the way, but that is also in the movie, at least the version I watched, which I think was slightly different. And the line "fuck you asshole" is used, about, hey buddy, you got a dead cat in there or what? But it's not said early in the film, and I do think it's, when you realize, oh, so earlier when they said things to it, literally like a couple of them, it just repeats back immediately, like. Nice night for a walk, nice night for a walk. Wash day tomorrow, nothing clean right, nothing clean right. But when the one of them says "fuck you asshole," that gets stored in the memory banks until later, and then only much later it still has it stored. It's like if someone asks something that I really don't want to respond to, that's what I say. And I do like that one of the options is "or what." It's not gonna, I mean, the Terminator is not a monster. It's not gonna lie to the poor man and say, yes, actually it's yes is one of the options, but it's not gonna say, I have a dead cat in here. But he said, dead cat in there or what? Or what? Which it's probably, I don't know, I mean, that might get just shrugged off in like the actual reply is in the movie, but anyway. And in this, Kyle actually does accept Sarah's plan to blow up Cyberdyne, and that's what they make the explosives for. And they discuss whether he would disappear, since then the timeline would change. And if they succeed in blowing up Cyberdyne, and I mean, that's never mind. And at the end, Sarah's leg is in a cast from her leg injury, and I guess that's why we don't see her try to blow it up again before the movie's over. And when he wrote it, he wasn't intending on making a sequel, so as it is, it's a good thing that the movie doesn't bring that up, because it would be kind of like, I mean, there are movies that have an idea like X-Men 1, they talk about, will this prison actually work? And then in the second one, there's certainly an attempt made at breaking out of the prison. I'm not going to give away whether it works. However, that movie is not, it's not really about that. That's a thing that happens in that movie. But there are other things that the first one didn't really predict, and that don't feel so. If literally the end of this movie had been them heading to blow up Cyberdyne, and then the second movie just plays it completely naturally for the second movie was exactly as it is now, that really wouldn't have worked. And there's some action scenes they couldn't have afforded, including helicopters, which I think maybe he was trying to make a kind of contrast between present-day helicopters and then the flying hunter-killers. And when Sarah crushes the Terminator in the hydraulic press, the button she presses is in front of her, not behind her, and right by, and right by the press itself, and has green lights that, signaling it's ready. And there's some, John made Kyle say, that was part of the message to Sarah, press the button when or something, when the green light and the red light line up, something like that. And so the red lights of the eyes of the Terminator and the green lights line up. She presses the button and it works. And that also really tells this thing of, she genuinely does. One second. there's a right, which clarifies, sorry, and that does say that what happens in the movie has happened. You know, she did crush the thing like that, and she made sure to tell John to tell Kyle that, you know, or she told John and he decided to tell Kyle. Actually, yeah, I guess she wouldn't know that it would be something useful to tell her, but anyway, but if you always travel, anyway. Now, the ending has Sarah hiding in some southern remote location instead of on the run somewhere around Mexico. Each time I read it, I can't help but think that it would make more sense for her to always be on the move, since this would make it easier for a Terminator to kill her when it found her, and sooner or later it would. Presuming that there would be more than one Terminator, why wouldn't you at least plan for that just in case? You know, it really does. Yeah. And that is, I mean, maybe at the end of this movie she is headed to a place where she intends to stay, but I'm really glad that that's not stated in the movie as being, as it is. I think it's absolutely perfect with her driving, and you see the thunder clouds, and the exchange, which was, there was already some version of that. I forget the exact, but a storm's coming. And I think originally she didn't say, I know, or, you know, she said, I suppose there is, which, I mean, I guess it's not terrible. And I'll be back started out as I will come back. That's so much less, yeah. Now, the treatment stills of, the treatment from the 83 version. Right, in this and the first one is like a public school playground instead of, I don't know, observatory, observatorium, whatever, you know, that they are at the start. I mean, ultimately, it doesn't make a lot of sense that it just needed to be somewhere remote enough that there wouldn't be a lot of people, but there would still be these 3 gang members, because we do need that, you know. I mean, think of how boring this movie would be if he walked, like, I mean, Kyle gets his clothes by going into, like, a store, because he's not going to kill anyone to get their clothes, and most people are not going to just willingly give up their clothes. Like, I mean, he doesn't even have a weapon on him when he gets the pants from the homeless man. And that is something I briefly will say about the abridged script. It points out that when Kyle pushes Sarah's head down, like, you know, his pants must smell horrible, and that is a slightly funny joke, and that is something, I admit, I hadn't really thought about it before, but it's absolutely true. I mean, yeah, anyway, you know, immediately we have one difference between Kyle and the Terminator, that, you know, one kills for clothes. No, clothes to kill for. Anyway. And let's see. And in this treatment, Reese doesn't have to kill the man who materialized in the fire escape. He's already dead. It does sound kind of like what's it called? The Fly kind of thing, like, you know, parts of the fire escape are stuck in parts of his body and such. And before the Terminator appears through the time travel, there's a cat, and the cops who chased Reese for pants theft have a Doberman. Yeah, sorry, I mentioned that in the other one. Anyway. And Reese crab walks across the aisle. I prefer to crab walk down to the beach, you know, to mock the crabs. But crab walking on the catwalk is the ultimate thrill. And, right, in this and the first one, there was an aerobics studio where Ginger works, and I forget if in the original, but in this treatment at least, there's weightlifting, and Matt and others are there. So even before Schwarzenegger was cast, the movie would show off muscled men, and you also have these machines to help work out and such. So yeah, basically once they cast Arnold Schwarzenegger, he realized, I can show off his muscles. I don't need the aerobics to do it, which I think it's a good, there's really no need to, anyway, it's not really a scene that accomplishes, it's the first scene where we see Ginger, but we don't really, you don't need a stronger introduction than she does have in the movie. And just briefly, there's apparently, Ginger has a nickname for Matt. It's Bunky, and I hadn't really realized, but she does, when I think it's the phone call. There's the obscene phone call where she's like, "Who is this?" And he's like, "Oh, Sarah, sorry, can I talk to Ginger?" And I think she says, "Sure thing, Bunky," or maybe it's when she's leaving and the apartment, and he comes by, something. Now, and this version does have Stan on the answering machine apologizing he can't make the date. In the original treatment, as well as this one, Reese is at one point surrounded by children, and let's see. Right, the scene the scene reminded me a little of in the second movie when the Terminator is trying to learn how to blend in. You have people around and just. And I do not have anything to say about the final treatment from 1984. Now, briefly on the second variety, short story. Now, I think I already mentioned I haven't watched Screamers. There are characters in this story that at first appear to be human, but later other characters and the reader realize that they are essentially Terminators. So you can read this short story and imagine that's what it looks like to be tricked by a Terminator in the future war. With this movie and some of the sequels showing what it's like in the present. And honestly, part of this story read like The Thing, but with the Terminator instead of the alien being of the Thing, and it's really cool. I gotta say, they did, just. I can't vouch for everything the man's written, but he wrote some incredible, both short stories and novels. I don't know if I'll ever do a video on the movie itself, but I do love it. Both the movie and the book. One second. A Scanner Darkly. I absolutely love it, and it's one of those things where I feel like if I say very much about it, I don't have a lot of personal experience that can really. It's a story about some some people who take drugs, and they're very paranoid, and there are these relationships between them and such, and it's just, I love reading that book and watching that movie, but I don't know how much I can really say about it without, I'll always be an outsider. That will never be my world. I'm really glad that people like Philip K. Dick allowed us to look into that world, and but it's just, I almost feel bad talking about it, because there are people who've actually experienced that, or who have close family who've experienced that, who can relate much more to the movie, and just but I absolutely love it. I think the director, Richard Linklater, I want to say his name is, did a brilliant job. The visual style is perfect. It would not have made sense in pure live action. Now, as much as I love the Terminator himself in this movie, and I really, really do, if I could only have one of the two I would choose to keep Kyle, Kyle as he's characterized in this, and Michael Biehn playing Kyle, and recast the Terminator with someone other than Schwarzenegger. And I know that's tantamount to, like, I'm not saying that the movie would have been as successful, but ultimately the character of Kyle has always meant the world to me ever since I first watched this movie. And yeah, I don't know, I feel like that's, that's the way a man should be towards his significant other, always protecting her, always, yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Now, some people say that this is the only in the series where the special effects in the climax don't hold up, and they don't find it as effective. They don't find it as effective. They don't find it effective as a film anymore. I think they do well enough at hiding that it's stop motion, and I do think that it's worth noting that this is the only movie in the series where the climax is actually scary. It's not just cool or mostly intense or really good action scene, it's genuinely terrifying. In this, it's cool, it's incredibly intense, it's a good action scene, but also terrifying. And it's, yeah, there is not a single thing in any of the other movies that is as scary as seeing the metal skeleton rising from the flames right behind the couple who genuinely believe now the danger is over. Now, as I have already gone into in this video and others, I love Kyle on the Terminator. I also love Sarah. And about Sarah, the next section Sarah Connor saves humanity. Now, in my old vlog about this movie, I talk about the Terminator himself and Kyle, but as someone on the IMDb boards pointed out when I posted the link there, I don't actually talk about Sarah Connor. He was very nice about it, but I wanted to make that right in this video. Sarah is a hero, and almost every single thing that she contributes with, and it is a lot, almost all of it are things that are traditionally considered feminine rather than masculine. And there's also some of, not, it's also noteworthy, I'll also be talking about that when I do more videos on aliens, but I think it's noteworthy how much the movie works out for the characters more because Ripley is kind of a mother to just for people who haven't watched that movie, that's all I'm going to say, but just the feminine traits is what I'm saying. Now, right, yeah, almost in tradition considered feminine rather than masculine. One of the only exceptions is that she finishes off the Terminator, even delivering a one-liner. But outside of that, it's feminine, reminding us that the world is saved not only by big guys who punch other big guys really hard. Don't get me wrong, I love the people punching, but the feminine values are incredibly underrepresented in Save the World movies, and it tends to be that it's the person just being saved has, feminine values, but the other people don't, the person doing the saving doesn't have any feminine values, doesn't have the feminine elements to I think what you mean what I'm talking about. Wonder Woman is one of the only other of these movies that get it really right. But back to this movie. At the start of the movie, she's working, making her own living. She does later say she can't balance her checkbook, but she doesn't need anyone else taking care of her, not until she's physically attacked. She has a positive relationship with her roommate and, Ginger's boyfriend. She gets by. Once she's attacked physically, she does need someone masculine to stop the attacker. But along the way, she protects Kyle when he's about to take on all the cops at the end of the car chase. He's faced hopeless odds so many times and only knows to solve problems with violence, so he almost blows it. And, her greater familiarity with 1984 society, tells her the cops would take down Kyle. I mean, I guess there's some chance that maybe he would have just jumped out and, like, declared what, his military rank and they would have been like, okay, gotcha, then we're going to work with you. I don't know exactly what he was going to do, but she says, no, they'll kill you. And so he stops, and he gets out of the car with, do we see him with his hands in the air? I forget, but, he gets out of the car very peacefully, which, I mean, if you've never been in that situation, why, it's like, to him, why would I throw down my gun? The Terminator's right over there. They have guns, I have a gun, we're on the same side. They're not robots, I'm not. I just have to prove to them that I'm not a robot, and then we'll be fine. But keeping in mind, I love the character of Kyle Reese, and he's also a big part of why mankind win. But as is the case in real life, sometimes primarily feminine people have to remind primarily masculine people not all problems can be solved in a traditionally masculine way. She helps dress his wound. If she hadn't, he would have been slowed down long before the plan at the end and gotten him killed. She hides in the police station. In countless other action flicks, she'd have grabbed a gun and run to the fray. She would have been killed, perhaps even by accident by a cop. She empathizes with Kyle and relates to him, giving him back his emotions which he had buried. Without that, they wouldn't have had sex, and John either wouldn't have come into the world at all, or he'd have a father who's substantially less experienced fighting killer robots. And thank you, James Cameron, for making a movie in which the emotions of the soldier don't make him less capable when he's in battle. Yes, it often happens, but sometimes it's more important to convey a positive message than to be realistic. People's humanity was destroyed by the robots as well, and the only reason our species survived was because the Connors maintained theirs and woke up that of other people. It doesn't take Sarah many hours to reawaken Kyle's. She raises a child who grows up to lead countless men to save humanity. Parents don't get enough credits for raising children. I'm with Steve Hofstetter. Anyone can get pregnant, but it's difficult to raise children well. But that is difficult. That is not something that, And yes, she becomes pregnant and delivers a child. And this is something that a lot of people don't think highly of. Men who don't want women to have rights say that having children is one of the only things women should do at all. And people who do want women to have rights acknowledge that, having children is important, but that women shouldn't be limited to that. This is one of those rare cases where clearly the message isn't that all women are good for, that it's all women are good for, but it also isn't ashamed to say, yes, women having children is one of their strengths. It's one of the things they can really offer the human species. Literally, if humanity were to lose the ability to procreate, we would die out in a very short time. Just briefly, that is something that it's not. The problem only arises when a woman is forced to have a child that she didn't want, or when she is, when it's said that it's all that women are good for, or the like. It's not a bad thing that women have children. It's actually been. Today, a lot of people choose to postpone having children, in part because it is seen as kind of, it's, a lot of people don't think it's the most, like they want to reach their full potential, and they feel like children just are not, and I just, to be fair, there are some people who, have incredible ideas, and if they had children, they wouldn't be able to put those ideas, I'm not saying everybody has to have children, and if you don't want to have children, I don't think people who don't want to have children should be made to have children. And I'm definitely not saying, today, as it is today, we don't need everybody to have children. There are more than enough that the species is not going to die out because you know, some people decide not to have children. But, you know, this was made in 1984, where overpopulation was not as much of a... Besides which, in the reality of the movie, having children, especially her having at least one son, is incredibly important. So, yeah. Now, early in the movie, she insists that Kyle must have picked the wrong person. She can't be who he says she is. And at the end of the movie, she's being that person. She's not giving up, even as she recognizes that it is difficult and will continue to be difficult for the coming decades. Now, let's see. Right. Too much of a hurry here. IMDb, Wikipedia, and critics' sites. So, let's just see. I made sure to read, excuse me, all of this. I'm not going to, yeah, this video got kind of long. I'm only gonna, yeah, just briefly, you know, there's this guy who said, you know, oh, right. The film has to end right after the tanker explosion. I told him straight, fuck you, the film isn't over yet. Just, what an idiotic way to end the film. That would just, yeah. Well, let's see. I think at some point I'm just gonna have to. Yeah, there's a trivia point where, you know, it lists the things that are similar, but also the differences between this movie and various slasher movies and such. And I just, you know, I'm just really glad that someone else is saying, you know, oh, it's similar to horror and slasher. I've been saying that for decades, ever since I first watched it. You know, that's part of the thing. The others are action movies. I wouldn't say of any of the others that they're horror movies. Now, let's see. Right, and let's see. Yeah, most of the car chase scenes were shot at normal speed and sped up slightly to add more of a sense of speed. The other cars rode along with them out of frame with revolving lights attached to them that made it seem like the car was passing other light sources faster. Now, I've always thought that this important, even necessary trick worked completely convincingly in the movie. If I sit down and watch the scenes and I'm just like really, it's one of those things where if you're not in the movie, you're not, yeah, then it doesn't work. But if you're watching it very carefully and you're not paying attention to the movie, but you're focusing on, then yeah, some of the time you can tell that it's sped up footage. Let's see. Bruce Willis and the English pop star Sting were considered for the role of Kyle Reese. I am really glad that Bruce Willis did not end up playing the role. I like him a lot, and I've seen him in some very varied performances. I've seen him as John McClane. I've seen him in 12 Monkeys. There is no way he would have made a good Kyle Reese. I'm sorry. And not sure I've seen Sting act. I haven't watched Dune, so I cannot comment on that. But yeah, no, I'm sorry. Bruce Willis is perfect as John McClane, and Michael Biehn is perfect as Kyle Reese. I wouldn't want Michael Biehn playing John McClane either. Now, let's see. I think at some point I will actually... Oh, right, here we go. The main title song by composer Brad Fiedel uses an odd time signature of, I don't know how I say this, 13/16. I don't know music, so this was simplified to 12/8 for the main 12/8 for the main title of the sequel, Terminator 2: Judgment Day. That might be part of my problem with the musical theme in the second one. It's just, I really do not like the. I honestly, if they played a completely different piece of music, I would just be. Oh, right, and I wrote to Randy Quaid was considered for the lead role. Yeah, okay. Right. So, I think at some point I'm gonna like make it easier to find the specific ones where I wrote notes instead of this, but anyway. The film was one of Albert Pyun's influences behind his post-apocalyptic action flick Cyborg, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. That is awesome. I love everything about that movie except the acting by the bad guy goons. Everything, just, yeah, and I can totally see it. And see, that's how you do. You know, that movie doesn't feel like it's just Terminator or something. It's very different from Terminator in a lot of ways. But yeah, it takes some yeah. There's a you know, you can take something like that and just do something completely different with it. Now, scrolling, hoping to avoid too much dead air. I mean, once I get to, yeah. See, it's also, when I put in everything, all the trivia, all the goofs and quotes and such, for other movies, when there aren't so many, it works. But here, it's like, yeah. Okay, now I've reached the goofs. I am just going to go ahead and scroll. Oh, wait. No, that's the thing. Some of these. Yeah, briefly, it points out that when the Terminator is going through the phone book, he's pointing at the names with his finger. But let's see. Yeah, the Terminators have specifically enhanced telescopic vision that allows them to zoom in, out, etc. on everything, even in the dark. It therefore makes no sense that this Terminator would have to use his finger to assist with his reading. He should be able to merely glance at the book and zoom in on the entire page or on the smallest part of the page and process this information in seconds. Do we actually see anything in the movie that really isn't that in the sequence? Anyway, you know, it very well might be true. Certainly, when I looked over it days ago, I thought it was true. And here's what I said about it. It's probably in part to make sure that the audience really focuses on what his finger is pointing to, keeping in mind that at this point we haven't seen any point of view shots from not a single one. I think when they're running out of the nightclub is when we first see then we see the red point of view shot. The audience is not supposed to know yet, but yeah, no. But yeah, finger two, yeah. You know, it's probably in part to make sure that the audience really focuses on what his finger is pointing to. It's possible they just forgot that it wouldn't really work like that. Maybe they didn't know exactly how the computer graphics would come out. You know, when they filmed that, maybe the idea of the zoom was added later. Now, yeah, I think from now on I'm going to try to add something each time I have, yeah. Because the thing is, occasionally I do actually go into all the stuff I just copy in from Wikipedia and IMDb and such. Sometimes, let's see. Right. Yeah, I believe this is still from Goofs. Kyle Reese and the human resistance know a great deal about Skynet's plan to kill Sarah Connor in the past. Since there's no need for Skynet to write such a plan down or to even store it in its memory banks, how could they have discovered it? Even worse, the majority of the information actually seems to have come from John Connor's memories of what his mother told, despite the fact that she definitely would only possess the barest sketch of what Skynet had planned, with most of that coming from Kyle Reese, who in turn was told what he knows by John Connor. 1 second, I think some of this, excuse me, well, the plan itself, are we certain that it's not just that they inferred, like, okay, there'd be no other reason to try? I mean, maybe they can tell it traveled back in time to 1984. I was about to say in Los Angeles, but no, the future parts are also Los Angeles. I mean, what else would it be doing back there? Yeah, I figure they just infer from that. I think anyway, but yeah, what I initially wrote was, it's a time travel paradox. It's the same as how Kyle can be the father of John Connor. The reason Sarah knew and could tell John is because it happened to her. A leads to B, leads to C, leads back to A. Now, and I thought I remembered one of the plot holes listed as being that John Connor couldn't know much about how to defeat the machine since Kyle has little time to tell Sarah and doesn't appear to tell Sarah very much about it. The way I see it, first off, we don't see everything he tells her. Second, a lot of what she teaches John that is useful is military tactics, not something you need knowledge of the robots to learn. It just, we're told in the second movie she did this. She went around, to people who had training and could, train him. And a big part of is probably also that she taught him since childhood, rather than only starting the military training once he's 18, which is traditionally how, that's why he's so incredibly good at it. It's second nature to him. Now, and maybe Skynet specifically targeted military bases, since certainly that would be an obvious target for nukes. So John Connor is one of the only people who has military training and is still alive. He was nowhere near a military base when the nukes hit, since because of the time travel paradox, he knew that the nukes would hit. And a lot of what Kyle does say is what they use, whether to move at night or during the day, that they use infrared to see, to use dogs to spot Terminators. These are things, if you don't already know them, a lot of people can get killed. He says they didn't even know who started the war. They didn't, again, I have to admit, when I first watched the movie, I didn't know that much about the Cold War, and I didn't think about the fact that the movie was made during the Cold War. So it didn't occur to me at the time. But basically he's saying people didn't know if America or if the West or the Soviet Union were the ones to start the war. When in reality it was Skynet and it was using the American. But the 1 second. The American. So just him showing up and saying, stop wondering about, our country's government anymore. It's gone, and we have to hide. Because, again, that wouldn't necessarily be the most obvious thing. Okay, so a lot of nukes go off. Well, I guess we have to rebuild society. No, we have to hide away from where robots could find us. If you don't know that there are killer robots out there, think about the flying one. Think about how many places around the world it could kill an insane amount of people. That model with, people don't survive it attacking and then flies onto another area and no one finds out what's going on. So it's just killing it. Anyway. There's one of them that's like, the T-800, yeah, I mean, it's a spoiler for another movie, so I'm not going to go into it. And it's really obvious that it's not. It's a retcon from a later movie, so it doesn't count as a mistake in this movie. It counts as a mistake in that movie when it retconned it. The retcon does a bad job. It makes a mistake in retconning. You can't call it a mistake in the thing that was original. Okay, so here we are in the IMDb FAQ, and I'm not sure there's any. Yeah. From now on, I am definitely... See, all I gotta do... These are always Word documents, so all I gotta do is put in a couple of letters in each place that there's something I want to say, and then I just do a word search for those letters and skip through that word search. Let's see... Right, and yeah, there's this part where, like... The frequently asked questions covers why did the Terminator not go directly, why did it not attack the cops, before the police station when the car crashed. And, it says, that, yeah, it says, like I said, the Sarah might not be believed by authorities. And the second movie does state for sure that Sarah is not believed by authorities. After all, if she was, she would not be locked up for having delusions. There might be people calling... Listen. There might be people calling them delusions, but she wouldn't be locked up legally. It would... in the second movie, she is locked up on legal terms. You can argue whether she shouldn't be or not. Obviously she is correct about what but clearly it is legal. The place where she's locked up, yeah, it's a messed up place, but that it's not. She's not kept in some basement somewhere. The police come right in there and question her, and they're not like, why is this woman locked up? I've never even heard of this place. This can't be, And Metacritic user reviews. There are a lot of these. I am not gonna... And see, almost all of these are very positive. But then there are just a couple that are negative, and I basically already said everything I had to say about that. And Rotten Tomatoes. First we have the tomato meter, and then we have the pro reviews. Now the tomato meter has 100% with the critics' consensus, with its impressive action sequences, taut economic direction, and relentlessly fast pace. It's clear why the Terminator continues to be an influence on sci-fi and action flicks. And the audience score is 89. Is that 89% want to see, or is it? No, it's good. Whatever. And the pro reviews. Yeah, just brief. There's this one critic who says, those nightmares we've all had about being chased by some relentless, unstoppable monster, this is the movie adaptation. And that, exactly. And that might be part of why I said, I've had those nightmares, and I've talked to other people about them, and they're like, that's weird. And this movie, okay, finally, at least the people who made this movie completely freaking understand what that feeling is like. Now, I guess that might be about it. Let's see. I think it's interesting, a lot of these reviews are from much, much later, long after the yeah, not that many of them are from like 84 or something. But then it didn't do that well in like when it was originally. Okay, and here we have Wikipedia stuff. I see. It's never mind. Here we have Wikipedia stuff. It didn't get as much attention when it was originally just like, people. The what's it called? The marketing didn't spend a lot of money on it, and on video, just briefly, on home video, it made a ton of money, and then it was like, he gets to make more big budget movies, and he gets to do a sequel. Now, briefly, I'm just going to read aloud this entire thing. The sequence is set in 2029, and stop motion sequences were developed by Fantasy 2, a special effects company headed by Gene Warren Jr. A stop motion model is used in several scenes of the film involving Terminator's skeletal frame. Cameron wanted to convince the audience that the model of the structure was capable of doing what they saw Schwarzenegger doing. To allow this, a scene was filmed of Schwarzenegger injured and limping away. This limp made it easier for the model to imitate Schwarzenegger. That is very clever. It makes a ton of sense to do that. It was like a let's see. That's how you do it. The moment that you see the skeleton limping, you don't think twice about it. It's just, of course it's still limping. Just like we saw him do, and that kind of thing can't move as fast. We've seen the Terminator can run. He runs right after the shootout at the club, right before he runs to chase Sarah and Kyle, which is also, I've heard some people say, why doesn't he run, right after the police station? The assault rifle was out of bullets. Even if there were more, I'm not sure we know if the shotgun is also out of bullets, but if they're, running and firing a shotgun, that's not gonna work. And they were already driving away in a car. When it's the club, when he starts running, they're also running. They get to a car and get it to start driving before he, they only just manage to start the car, and then he leaps onto, the car. So there they don't have very much of a head start. Right outside of the police station, they do have a head start. And I do also note that, apparently, he only fires like a brief burst of assault rifle fire, if I recall. Apparently, he hits Kyle because, when else could Kyle have been wounded? He wasn't wounded before the police station shootout, and the Terminator doesn't catch up to them until right out there. So and there's not just a brief I don't have written a ton of off-topic stuff this time, but I do just briefly Yeah, just briefly. When Tucker Carlson told his Dutch guest, "Go fuck yourself," my immediate response is, why? He's so good at fucking you. And on that note, I will end this video, which, as expected, got to be quite long. 3 hours and 35 minutes, but it's only slightly longer than last time I did a vlog talking about Terminator, where I talked for, what was it, 20 minutes? So yeah, that is everything. So once again, just briefly, if you want like cool special features, yeah, I would definitely say, you know, the 2-disc special edition is probably less expensive today than the Ultimate Edition. The Ultimate Edition is very new, which is why, you know, I bought the special edition many years ago, I guess over a decade ago, and the Ultimate Edition I bought much more recently. So, you know, there's definitely, I mean, if you're talking just video special features, if, you know, I can imagine like the video quality might be even better, but if you're just talking, are there, you know, a lot of like extra special features as videos? I mean, no, then I wouldn't say it. I'm happy with it because there are other things that make up for that. But if you just want that, see, I think that you shouldn't be able to sell a DVD without saying what the running time of the different special features is, and just a brief like, okay, but is it like some rando doing voiceover over stills, or is it interviews? Is it actual behind the scenes? I don't understand why people are okay with buying something that, you know, I mean, I wouldn't be buying these movies if it wasn't that I wanted the movie itself. If I was buying DVDs specifically for special features, I would be incredibly frustrated with how little information is. You know, I look for special features, but I'm not like, I want the movie itself as well. Otherwise, anyway, yeah. So that's it for the, you know, I still say, you know, if you, like I said at the start, you know, I said at the start of the old vlog, I'm saying at the end of the new vlog, the VHS mono sound version still is the only one I've seen that has the original proper gun sound for the 45 long slide. And yeah, it's frustrating to watch the others, but I did watch, you know, I'm not gonna buy a DVD of a movie and then watch the, you know, and then not watch it even once. So anyway, and I'm sure I will watch it again. So but yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching as I enjoyed watching and recording, and I will catch you